Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei Unlocked Legend Mode. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. What is this red? Is it blood? But I'm not bleeding. Issei wondered as he looked at himself. He turned to his right to search for the cause of the sea of blood surrounding him and fell silent at the sight. Akino, Kaneko, and Zenobia lay on the ground, injured and bleeding. He turned to his left and found Ravel, Ophis, Irina, and Asia in the same condition. A few were barely breathing, others showed no signs of life. In front of them stood a gigantic humanoid creature of earth and stone, bound by heavy chains. Kiba, Rosweiss, and Gasper faced it defiantly. Kiba called desperately for Issei to help. As the plea echoed, Issei felt something in his arms and, trembling, looked down. Rias was there, bleeding and fading. She whispered her love to him as her light dimmed, and Issei collapsed in grief. He let out a heart-wrenching cry full of anger, sorrow, and loss. A cold, merciless voice taunted him, declaring his failure, and a figure pulled on a chain that restrained the monstrous being. Issei turned toward the sound and saw someone perched atop the creature's head. A gem in the creature's chest flared with dark purple light, and a beam shot outward. Then Issei closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was in his bedroom. He told himself it had been a strange dream and tried to get up. Relief washed over him when he found the members of the Occult Research Club asleep around him. Asia and Akino lay to his right, using their arms as pillows. Akino rested close while Asia held a comforting position. Kaneko, in her small sleeping form, was curled against him and purred softly. Ravel, Zenobia, and Irina slept nearby at his legs. Rias and Ophis used his other arm as a pillow. The younger members were present and sleeping peacefully in their pajamas. He breathed a sigh of relief that they were all unharmed. His glance fell on the clock, 6:59 and 55 seconds in the morning. The seconds seemed to blur forward. He shut his eyes and pretended to remain asleep as the alarm rang right on time at 7. The alarm's chime repeated until Rias, still groggy, woke up. Rias yawned and, still half asleep, reached up and clung to Issei's neck before settling back to rest. Issei kept pretending to be asleep, feeling flustered but determined. One by one, the others stirred. Irina, noticing she was awake first, turned off the alarm and nestled between Asia and Issei. Ophis rubbed her eyes and held on to his left arm for a moment. Akino teased Asia playfully and drew close, resting a hand near his shoulder in an affectionate gesture. Zenobia woke with a small smile and chose to stay put. Ravel woke briefly before lying back down. The three who had been at his legs tightened their hold, reluctant to leave. Kaneko, still sleepy, snuggled against Issei with her ears and tail curling in contentment. The small, familiar comforts of the room kept everyone lingering a little longer. After a while, Rias decided to get up. She noticed that Issei had not moved despite their efforts. To rouse him, she told the others they should start their day without him. The girls protested, pleading to stay a bit longer with him. They argued in sleepy, teasing tones, threats, and bargaining more playful than serious until Rias stood firm. Issei announced quietly that he would go take a bath and hurried out of the room. The mood shifted to gentle reluctance as the others realized the morning routine had begun. No one openly defied Rias, though a few pouted at being dispersed. The small group began to rise and prepare for the day, the earlier nightmare already fading into the unsettled edges of Issei's memory. The club president ordered everyone to get up. The girls reluctantly began to leave, some rising immediately and moving out of the room. Issei opened one eye as they went, and once the last of them had left, he sighed and opened his eyes fully. Drake's voice laughed in his head, teasing that mornings like these were always exciting, almost like survival tests. Issei rolled his eyes at the familiar banter but could not help smiling at the chaotic routine. The door opened again and Akino quietly entered. Akino approached the bed, settled beside him, and spoke playfully that she had him to herself for a moment. After offering a warm good morning, Akino left the room. A short while later Kaneko returned quietly, gave a brief, affectionate greeting, and then slipped out again. Issei breathed, relieved for a moment of calm, and a small gem appeared in his left hand. Drake continued to tease him in thought, but Issei, feeling the tiredness of training, welcomed the short pause. Soon Irina and Zinovia arrived together and immediately began to bicker like children about whose turn it was to give him his morning attention. Irina complained nervously that it was her turn, while Zinovia reminded her of previous days. They exchanged teasing remarks about future plans and left in a flurry of playful argument after Zinovia leaned in to offer a cheerful, non-intrusive morning gesture that made Irina pout and step outside to keep arguing. After the door opened again, Ravel entered with little Phoenix at her side. Ravel cheerfully asked if Issei's clothes were ready, and Phoenix nodded with a bright smile. They agreed to head to the kitchen when they finished, then paused when Ravel noticed Issei still appearing to rest. Ravel asked Asia privately whether she had ever given Issei a morning greeting while he appeared asleep. Asia blushed and answered awkwardly, suggesting a shy embarrassment rather than anything more. Ravel admitted that she had never dared. Aquino asked if she wanted to try and, with a mischievous smile, took Ravel's hand and led her toward Issei's bed. Ravel answered with hopeful eagerness as they drew closer. Aquino said she would do it if Ravel promised not to tell Bucho. Ravel agreed on the condition that she could have her turn afterward. Issei noticed that Asia was becoming bolder, finally feeling Aquino's influence. He felt someone lean close, and the three of them shared a private, secret moment at his bedside. Ravel warned that they might wake him, and the girls blushed as their wings spread without them realizing it. One of them asked what it felt like to be close to Issei. Another replied that it was wonderful. They whispered and laughed softly, but then the atmosphere grew tense as heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Rias called out, asking where Asia and Ravel were as she approached the door. The two blondes froze and panicked, whispering that they were in trouble. Ravel urged them to escape through the window and, spreading wings of flame, Asia and Ravel disappeared from the room like a flash. Issei broke into a cold sweat and feared the consequences if Rias found out. Rias then opened the door slowly. The metal hinges creaked as she entered. Aquino made a dry, teasing comment about the situation. Issei feigned sleepiness and pretended to yawn while slowly sitting up. Rias locked the door and explained that they were alone and that the other girls were busy with chores. She drew the curtains so only their silhouettes were visible and suggested they play a game together. Issei thought how fortunate he was to be spending the morning like this. Rias asked how he wanted to start. She suggested beginning with a warm morning greeting and then enjoying some quiet time together. As Issei reached out to respond, Rias noted that he smelled of perfume. Issei whispered in disbelief, sensing a sudden, ominous aura in the room. In that instant, Aquino burst into the chamber from the kitchen, and a sharp cry rang out. Issei tried to avoid a morning confrontation, but a lingering perfume betrayed him. He scratched the back of his head, embarrassed, while the gem on his left fist offered a teasing remark about his luck with the girls. The gem's voice teased that if they were not arguing over who took his arm, they were arguing over who got the first greeting of the day. Issei muttered thanks and decided it would be safer to go down to the living room. After an extra cold shower and taking his time getting dressed, he went downstairs and found the two older women arguing over the perfume. When he sat on one of the sofas, a small black-haired girl named Ophis leapt onto him and greeted him enthusiastically for the morning. The others in the room turned and focused on Ophis, their expressions sharp. Rias stepped forward to confront the little girl. Ophis looked up innocently and explained that she had only been doing what the others did when they entered Issei's room while he pretended to be asleep. The other girls closed in around her and began to argue. Realizing what Ophis had said, Issei used the confusion to slip away and hide. From the circle, Rias accused that Issei was involved. Aquino said he had been pretending. Kaneko noted that he had been sleeping. Zinovia mentioned that while everyone was there they had entered his room. Irina and Asia insisted they had greeted him, and Ravel confirmed the story. Ophis, still confused, indicated of course she had not realized the trouble she caused. Then, together with a cold, dark tone, the group called for Issei, searching for him. Hiding and shaking with fear, Issei questioned what he had done as tears formed in his eyes. Someone touched his shoulder and advised him to come out because the longer he stayed hidden, the angrier they would become. He turned in relief and found Azazel standing there. Azazel observed that the girls were furious and that Issei's plan had not worked. B.E.R.Z, speaking in his usual blunt way, explained that the scheme had failed because Office had been with him and had seen and heard everything. Issei called B.E.R.Z a traitor, disappointment in his tone. Azazel laughed and asked Issei why he had thought such a plan would succeed. Issei admitted that he had tried to avoid fights. Since the girls always argued over who got to give him the morning greeting, he had pretended to be asleep in hopes they would all greet him and the conflict would end. Azazel and B.E.R.Z reacted with amusement and disbelief. The girls continued to argue, each insisting that Issei belonged to them in one way or another. Ravel then raised her voice and suggested a solution. Since they did not all greet the same way, Issei should decide from now on who would give the morning greeting so the fighting would stop. Some of the girls liked the idea, others argued over who would be chosen. As the debate continued, Issei, Office, and Azazel quietly withdrew. Issei thanked Azazel for rescuing him from the immediate trouble. Azazel replied that Issei should not expect such help every time and hinted that he needed the group of 5 for a reason. Issei, puzzled, wondered who those 5 were. When they arrived at the Occult Research Club, Rosweiss, Kiba, and Gasper were already there. Issei greeted them and asked since when they had been there. Kiba answered that they had been present since 6 in the morning because Azazel had woken them early. Issei, surprised, asked why no one had woken him. Early in the morning, Gasper explained that Issei had looked so comfortable with the president and the others that they had felt sorry about waking him. Rosweiss added that she had already known about his plan and had wanted to see what would happen. Issei guessed it involved Office, and Rosweiss clarified that she had also been with B.E.R.Z. Issei sighed in disappointment and told them to forget it, then asked Azazel what he needed. Azazel said he would explain again tomorrow and reminded them that it was a special day, Rias's birthday. Azazel noted that Sona was currently preparing the hall for the party. Issei fretted that he had nothing to give Rias for her birthday. Office said that meant she would not be able to spend time with Issei tomorrow. Azazel reassured Office that the two of them would make Rias and the other girls jealous. Issei reacted with surprise. A loud shout filled the room. Office urged them to speak seriously, stars shining in her eyes. Issei thought that maybe Office was happy, but if he did not get killed for his answer he would be doomed because she was the first person he had ever gone on a date with. His body went into shock. Azazel explained he could not say more because the plan belonged to Sona, and ordered Issei and Office to go to Sona immediately while the others began Phase 2 of the Crimson Princess birthday operation. Everyone answered with a loud affirmative. Issei echoed it weakly, his tone sounding as if 1 foot were already in the grave. Later with Sona, Office greeted the student council president. Sona asked how Office had been and whether Issei had been told the plan, smiling wryly. Issei, feeling dejected, protested that the plan would get him killed. Sona told him not to complain. It was a perfect plan. He would distract Rias while the rest prepared the party. Issei objected that it was not only Rias but all the girls, and he shuddered imagining how rough they might be. Zenobia and Irina, Kaneko leaving bruises, Ravel's harsh reprimands, and Aquino or others striking with powerful abilities. Sona reassured him they had anticipated everything. He only needed to wear a communicator and Saji would help. They would explain the rest tomorrow. Office responded obediently. Sona said Office's role was the most important. She had to enjoy the date with Issei. Office lit up with excitement. Sona handed them 2 tickets to see a new film. Issei fretted that his part would be pointless if Office enjoyed herself. Sona insisted Office must enjoy the date. When Issei asked what he should do, Sona pointed at him and said his role was to be the focus so everyone would aim their attention at him, and she advised him to have something to dry his tears. Issei's eyes went pale as he imagined the girls' intense auras pursuing him. Azazel arrived and told Issei to spray the powder on the girls when he got home so they would forget what he had done that morning, and warned Office to keep the date secret or she would lose the chance to be alone with Issei. Office promised to remain silent. Issei thanked Azazel. Azazel said it was the least he could do because what awaited Issei the next day would likely be severe, and if they forgot today's events perhaps tomorrow they would only punish him until he wished he were not there. The grim remark oddly steeled Issei as he pictured enormous auras chasing him with exaggerated, anime-style weapons, an overblown image of danger rather than anything graphic. The next morning, after the powder had been used and following a late-night scuffle over a goodnight kiss, Issei woke from the familiar nightmare. He bolted awake to find all the girls clinging to him, each expressing affectionate intentions in their own way. Asia asked him not to struggle so hard. Rias called him a pervert and admitted she liked him in a heartfelt way. Kaneko accepted the idea of being close to him and spoke of commitment. Zenobia expressed a desire to take responsibility for their future. Irina checked that he was comfortable. Ravel invited him to continue the conversation privately in her room. Issei thought how forward they all were. He began to ask how they planned to have a future together, but Aquino appeared at his side, surrounded by a tense, furious aura, interrupting him. The scene replayed in his mind, leaving the same question unfinished as the morning light crept in. He did not finish the sentence because someone to his left startled him. Aquino began to mention having a date, and an intense golden aura surrounded her. Issei, nervous, told her it was nothing and asked her to go back to sleep while swallowing hard. Aquino insisted she would not be lied to, noting how nervous he seemed, and she demanded to know why Ophis had not gone to bed the previous night. She fixed him with a serious look and conjured a small glow of electricity in her hand. Issei agreed to explain but asked Aquino to help free him first. Aquino returned to her normal demeanor and produced a stack of cushions to substitute for him. In an instant, Issei and Aquino were by the bed and saw that everyone else was hugging a pillow. Aquino told him that she had freed him and demanded to know what he was planning. She warned that if he did not confess, she would return him to the bed and tell everyone he had been planning to sneak off to a date with Ophis. She whispered the threat with a mischievous smile. Issei panicked and thought quickly that they must not find out. He improvised a plan. He stepped close to Aquino, took her by the waist, and whispered an invitation to a date. Aquino blushed and reminded him that he was supposed to have a date with Ophis. He replied that they would only watch a movie and then eat, and that they would spend that time together before the movie started. He smiled in a way meant to be romantic while privately thinking he had come up with the perfect cover. Aquino moved even closer and, still blushing, said that if he had wanted time alone he only needed to ask. She also admitted she liked seeing him relaxed. Issei found himself flustered by her closeness and had trouble thinking clearly. Aquino said she would go get ready and suggested they hurry so they would not wake the others. She left the room, and Issei felt his imagination run away with him before he forced himself to calm down. From the next room, Aquino called that she would be quick and they would leave soon. Kaneko then intervened, noting that Issei should not be imagining things and offering to spend time with him later in a straightforward manner. Issei was startled and fell to the floor. Kaneko sat down beside him and calmly proposed taking him shopping and to the movies, and even mentioned the idea of dancing. Issei, embarrassed and overwhelmed, stammered but eventually agreed to her suggestions. Kaneko warned Issei that if he stood her up, he should hide, because she would tell everyone what he had planned. She said she would share him only until she decided he would be hers alone, and she fixed him with a fierce, playful look. Issei coughed, spitting out the hairs that had gotten in his mouth. Kaneko said she was going to bathe and left the room to prepare. Once she was gone, the brown-haired boy on the floor cried, overwhelmed by the trouble he had gotten himself into. He whispered that he was more afraid than ever. It was barely 6 in the morning and his life felt like it was turning into hell. A cold, dark voice interrupted his thoughts and told him the hell had not yet begun, that he should enjoy his party because it would be the last one he enjoyed with her. Issei, shaken, asked who spoke. The voice laughed and gave the name D. Issei tried to call out to Darks, confused and frightened, and wondered if this had something to do with his recurring dream. In Ophis's room she fretted about what to wear, telling herself to relax because she still had hours. She calmed down and smiled at the thought of a movie with Issei, imagining how their outing might go. Aquino soaked in a bubble bath, relaxing and holding a small doll that reminded her of Issei. She smiled at the thought that, soon, Issei would be very happy. Kaneko bounced on her bed with a photo of Issei in hand, thrilled at the idea of her first date with him. She reviewed the advice Kuruko had given her. First, pay attention to his aura. If it wavered, he was nervous. If it stayed steady, he was confident in what he was doing. Second, keep her personality composed and confident, letting her calm, measured side lead the way. The third rule, Kuruko had teased, was a surprise to be discovered during the date. Kaneko scolded Kuruko for being mean to her and then prepared herself, kissing the photo gently as she vowed to find out how much Issei loved her. Issei stood before the bathroom mirror repeating the words of the mysterious voice in his head, wondering who Darks was. B.E.R.Z appeared and asked what was wrong, noting the worried expression. Issei dismissed it as probably just a dream. B.E.R.Z was skeptical but then offered him a surprise, the ability to teleport without magical circles. He demonstrated with a snap of his fingers, and when the sound faded, they were in the kitchen. B.E.R.Z explained that Azazel and Surzex had asked him to teach Issei this technique to help in battle. He added that as Issei improved, he might be able to teleport by thought and even transport others by touching them. Issei was astonished and thanked B.E.R.Z, teasing that now he knew B.E.R.Z cared. B.E.R.Z laughed, but his expression grew serious as he admitted he did not think the dream was merely a dream. Issei decided he would get ready and, even if the worst came, he would enjoy the day. A date with Akino, a movie with Office, a dance with Kaneko, and a party with Bush. He smiled at his luck and set off. Later, at the shopping mall, Issei fretted about why Akino was taking so long. B.E.R.Z explained that Sona had asked them to meet at the academy at dusk with all the girls and that plans had changed. They agreed to go shopping while they waited. Ravel caught sight of Issei seated near a fountain and hid, whispering to Bush. Rias peeked and was stunned to see Akino with Issei. The other girls hid as well, surprised by Akino's outfit, which consisted of a striped blouse, fitted jeans, and heels. Akino was tall, her hair loose and a jacket that fit her a bit snugly. Saji asked why Akino was here and reminded Issei that the plan involved Office. Issei told Saji to stay calm and to help him now with Akino and later with Kaneko. Saji reacted with disbelief at the idea of 3 dates in one day and warned Issei not to ruin the plan. When Issei asked what the plan actually was, Saji explained that he and Gasper had only been told to watch Bucho and the other girls and to alert Issei if anyone approached so he could change course. Issei told Saji to speak quietly and notified him that Akino had arrived. Issei widened his eyes and admired how beautiful Akino looked. He said Akino looked beautiful. Akino responded playfully that she could make herself look even more lovely, then pressed a quick, affectionate kiss to his cheek. From behind the bushes, Rias loomed and demanded to know how Akino could lie and go out with Issei, her presence radiating a tense, threatening energy. Zenobia noted that Akino was the first to have an official date with Issei. Irina whimpered that she also wanted a date with Issei and begged for blessings from Miguelson, tears forming as she threw a small tantrum. Asia cried that it was not fair. Ravel suggested they follow at a distance. Perhaps the group was simply buying a gift for Bucho. At that, everyone remembered that Bucho's birthday was tomorrow and reacted with surprise. Rias hesitated, acknowledged that it was her birthday tomorrow, and decided to keep following them. She also warned that if it turned out to be a date she would interfere, thinking possessively that Issei was hers as her mood darkened. Saji reported to Issei that he had found Bucho and that Phase 3 of Kaicha's plan could begin. Issei suggested taking Akino shopping. Akino brightened and imagined what kind of outfit Issei might like, expressing excitement in her voice. Issei smiled, thinking through the idea as they moved on with the plan. Saji instructed Issei to enter the dress shop and hide because their pursuers were getting close. Issei asked Akino what she thought of some of the dresses. Akino agreed to try something formal and added, in a playful tone, that she would like his help putting it on. Saji muttered that he hoped she would accept quickly because Bush and the others were arriving. Issei went into the shop without hesitation. While Akino browsed for a dress, Issei kept watch to make sure the other girls did not approach. Saji told him to calm down and explained that they were in the shoe store nearby. At that moment, a girl accidentally bumped into Issei. Issei apologized awkwardly and noticed she was strikingly beautiful, causing him to blush. The girl had long blue hair like Rias, wore a miniskirt and a jacket, and carried a distinctive presence. She introduced herself as May, excused herself, and walked away. As she passed, she whispered that they would meet again soon and mentioned the name Darks. Issei was startled by the word Darks and tried to respond, but Aquino called him, and when he turned, May had already disappeared. Aquino asked where May had gone and Issei brushed it off, asking whether she had found a dress. Aquino confirmed she liked one and told Issei he could take the time to help her put it on. Saji, listening over the microphone, complained about the delay. In a dark place far away, May stood with two hooded figures. May reported to a cloaked master that she had completed her mission. The master asked if the message had been delivered, and Drake answered that Drake had been informed. Drake was a towering, muscular figure with white hair, two swords on his back, a mask marked with red lines, and a long tail. Drake questioned whether it was time to begin their operation. The master confirmed that the NOVA was ready and ordered Phase 2 to start, assigning Drake to the attack and instructing May to release the NOVA. Both replied that they were ready. The master smiled with cold certainty and vanished in a swirl of black smoke. Back at the shop, Issei and Aquino spent time helping Aquino change into her outfit. They took their time making sure everything fit. When they finished, Issei checked the time and realized he had to leave for a meeting with Office at the cinema. Aquino protested that their time together had been too short and showed him the outfit she had chosen. A white dress to the knees, sandals, a straw hat, her hair styled carefully, and a handmade bag. She pleaded for more time, but Issei gently reminded her that he had promised Office he would be on time and did not like breaking his promises. Aquino reluctantly allowed him to go but said she wanted something in return. Issei hesitated, unable to agree at once. Rias reacted to the situation with rising anger as she watched from nearby, while Ravel thought privately that her theory about the situation might be right. Asia, Irina, and Zenobia looked on with mixed feelings, confusion, disappointment, and mild envy. Rias approached Issei with increasing fury when she saw them embrace. Saji warned Issei over the radio that Bush was approaching and seemed to suspect something had happened. Growing nervous, Issei took Aquino by the hand and led her back into the dressing room. Inside, Aquino confronted him with raw vulnerability and expressed how much she cared for him. The moment was tense and deeply emotional but remained non-essential. Aquino asked if he resisted because she was not Bush, questioning whether his feelings were only for Rias. Footsteps approached outside the dressing room. Fearing confrontation, Issei snapped his fingers and used a brief teleportation to take both himself and Aquino back to his room, leaving the dressing room empty when Bush and the others opened it and looked around for them. At Issei's home, Aquino turned away and began to cry. Issei tried to calm her and called her name gently, but she shouted that he could not love her as she loved him and accused him of loving only Rias. Issei moved closer to comfort her, but Aquino pushed him away, demanding that he keep his distance. He held her in a quiet embrace even as she struggled. Her emotional turmoil intensified and a noticeable crackling energy built around her in response to her distress, visible and dramatic like an intense anime-style outburst. The sudden surge caused the microphone to sputter and explode with a burst of feedback in Issei's ear, and Saji's voice came through the comm, urgently noting that Issei was now alone. Issei apologized while enduring the crackling energy as best he could. Aquino, shaking with emotion, asked what he was apologizing for since nothing had been done, and the energy around her continued to flare as she fought with her feelings. Issei became even more overwhelmed and began to cry, explaining that he had never properly shown Aquino how much he cared for her or valued her for who she was. Aquino's body trembled with pain as she accused him of treating everyone the same and called herself nothing but one more girl to him. Issei, frustrated and tender at once, insisted that she was wrong and that if she had truly been just a toy to him, he would not have left to be with any of the others. He pleaded with Aquino, admitting that there was no easy way to show how important she was to him and that he feared causing others pain whenever he had to make difficult decisions. He paused with difficulty finding the right words, saying that he did not want anyone to suffer when he chose a path. A few minutes after Issei's explanation, Akino managed to smile. She found herself in his arms, crying but calmer. Issei reassured her that nothing bad had happened and that she did not deserve to be upset. Akino said she wanted to make it up to him, wiping her tears and holding him tighter. Issei refused to let her go to extreme lengths, calling her his beautiful Akino and promising that after he handled the things he needed to, he would give her a whole day just for them. He promised to make it up to her for making her cry, and in a quiet, affectionate moment, he leaned in and gave her a gentle, comforting kiss. He also told her that what had occurred earlier in the locker room would remain between them. With that, Issei teleported away, and Akino stayed in the room thinking about his words. She whispered to herself that now she knew he loved her and resolved to do whatever it took until the day he belonged to her. Meanwhile at the mall, Rias angrily demanded where they had gone. Asia urged everyone to calm down. Ravel tried to soothe the group and suggested there might be an explanation. Irina, sword in hand and wearing a wild look, scanned the area for Issei. Zenobia told everyone to stay calm and focus on finding him. Rias suddenly noticed Issei entering the cinema with Office and reacted in stunned outrage, slamming her hand into a wall and forming a dark, threatening aura. Ravel began to cry, distressed, while Irina warned that they would get their revenge. Zenobia commented that the situation was certainly problematic. Inside the theater, Office expressed concern about Issei. He replied nervously that it was nothing, but his thoughts were restless and tangled. He wondered about strange names that had crossed his mind and what they might mean. Office suggested they sit and watch the movie, and Issei agreed, still distracted. Back outside, the group argued over Issei inviting Akino to shop and Office to a movie. Rias blushed with anger, convinced there must be a reason. Ravel tried to hold on to the hope of an explanation but looked nervous. Asia said she had already bought the tickets and they should see what was happening. Zenobia agreed that they should watch and let tempers calm. Irina, still tense, said in a grim tone that they would settle it soon. While the movie played, Drake spoke to Issei in his mind, saying that they needed to talk about the legendary mode. Issei acknowledged it and was told to wait until they were alone to discuss it, because Office could not be allowed to find out it was a secret for celestial dragons and their wielders. Issei promised to call when he could, then returned to the present as Office reminded him the film was starting. 2 hours later, as they left the theater, Office clung to Issei with her eyes closed, expressing a trembling fear. She asked him, in a softer voice, to promise that if her power ever spiraled out of control he would stop her with a kiss. Issei blushed at the request and smiled at her, gently lifting her chin to meet her eyes. He promised that if that day ever came, he would calm her during a peaceful, caring moment. A date and a kiss meant to help her regain herself. He added that until then he would buy her an ice cream and make sure she got home safely. Office beamed and hugged him in relief. Asia and Zenobia emerged from the cinema trembling and full of emotion. Rias demanded where they had been, and Asia and Zenobia screamed in unison, upset and overwhelmed. Ravel asked what had happened, watching Asia and Zenobia cling to each other. Asia explained through sobs that they had seen Issei enter the movie with Office and had watched a horror film. It had been terrible and frightening for them. Zenobia hugged Irina tightly and apologized when Irina complained that she needed air, though the embrace had been meant as comfort. Rias, furious, accused Akino of having influenced Issei and suspected Office of using some power to affect him. She raged that someone must have conspired to take Issei away from her and vowed to make them pay. The tense group huddled together in a frightened embrace, and Ravel remarked that the whole scene was scarier than the movie. Zenobia groaned in exasperation. Asia warned that someone might really be capable of harming Issei. Irina pointed out 2 familiar girls nearby and identified them as Kuroka and Kaneko. Everyone turned to look. Kuroka complimented her sister, telling her she looked great. Kaneko replied that she knew after all, Kuroka had chosen the outfit she was wearing. Kaneko's clothes were casual and youthful, a short skirt, a shirt with a simple design, a denim jacket, slip-on shoes, and a beret that obscured her ears, with her tail wrapped around her waist where a belt might be. Kaneko shifted her expression briefly, showing a softer side as she acknowledged Kuroka's help with her look. Kuroka remarked that he was running late and asked if Kaneko agreed. Kaneko reassured her that he would not stand her up and smiled in the same way she had seen Asia smile, certain that he would arrive. Issei suddenly appeared behind them and asked how she could think he would stand her up. Kuroka greeted Issei and urged Kaneko to say hello. Kaneko froze when she felt Issei's arms settle around her shoulders in a friendly embrace. Kaneko told herself to follow Kuroka's confident lead, poised but gentle, sweet yet composed, and struggled with the realization that she might actually be going on a date with Issei. She told herself to calm down as her cheeks flushed. Issei asked if Kaneko was all right and whether she might be ill, then gently placed his hand on her forehead to check for a fever. Kaneko gasped softly and opened her mouth as if to respond, then quickly grew flustered and fell silent. Kuroka greeted Issei with a teasing tone and remarked that he seemed eager. She announced that her business there was finished and prepared to leave. Kaneko bowed to Kuroka and thanked her. Kuroka said there was no need for thanks, that Kaneko was family, and then warned Issei that if he hurt her sister she would punish him severely. Issei gave a nervous affirmative. Before departing, Kuroka agreed to pass a message, and Issei asked her to tell Valley and Albion that he needed to speak with them about legend mode. Kuroka asked what legend mode was, and Issei explained briefly that it was a dragon-related matter and asked her to deliver the request. Kuroka said farewell and disappeared. After they were alone, Issei asked Kaneko where she wanted to begin. Kaneko admitted shyly that she was inexperienced with dates, folding her hands in embarrassment. Issei reassured her that it was nothing to worry about and suggested they get something to eat and think about ideas. As they planned, Rias appeared behind them, her presence overwhelming the area with a fierce, intimidating aura, and she demanded to know what Issei meant by a date. Rias also pressed him for an explanation about supposed dates with Aquino and Ophis. Irina watched with a sharp smile. While gripping her sword, Sona arrived with Saji and offered to explain the situation more clearly to the others. Sona led Rias and the other girls away to talk things over, leaving Issei and Kaneko alone. Issei breathed a sigh of relief at the interruption. Kaneko suggested they get ice cream while the others were distracted. Issei agreed, though he hesitated over whether to take a local flavor or go somewhere special. With a snap of his fingers he transported them to Paris and the Eiffel Tower, where a waiter awaited them. The waiter offered ice cream flavors and the brown-haired Issei asked Kaneko which she preferred. Kaneko blushed at being on her first trip, and they shared a pleasant moment together, enjoying their treats and the view as friends. Kaneko leaned on Issei's shoulder, noticing a subtle warmth in his presence that felt comforting. She recalled Kuroka's comment about reading auras and quietly acknowledged the gentle feeling. After finishing their ice cream, Issei took Kaneko to a costume shop because she wanted to go dancing and would need an appropriate outfit. Kaneko expressed concern that the place might be inappropriate, but Issei assured her it would be fine and encouraged her to pick the most amazing costume she could find. She thanked him, and he waved it off. Later that night, back in Japan, Issei brought Kaneko to the academy. He told her to go to the dressing rooms and put on her dress for a surprise. When she moved closer to him to ask for a promise about their next trip to Paris, the moment was brief and tender. She asked him to promise that if they returned to Paris they would enjoy another special evening together. Issei blushed, agreed, and Kaneko brightened before hurrying off. Issei relaxed and called out to the glove he wore as Drake. Drake spoke through the glove, reminding Issei that he was not truly alone. Issei turned toward a presence at the end of the corridor and saw a figure with wings approaching. Valley had arrived, and Albion stood with him. Issei asked how long it had been, and Valley responded casually. Issei mentioned that Kuroka had been sent to bring Valley and Albion because they needed to discuss legend mode. Albion and Drake debated whether they should reveal the legend mode. Drake insisted they should explain it now. Suddenly, white and red lights flared, and when the lights subsided, Issei and Valley found themselves mounted atop celestial dragons. Albion explained that they were not witnessing a trick but were being shown memories to help them understand. Drake guided their attention and told them to look to their left. They turned and saw a towering humanoid figure with an imposing, otherworldly appearance, an entity with multiple wings and a warrior-like form, for eyes, and carrying a dark red scythe. Albion identified the being as Nove and warned that it was the natural enemy of both dragon-bearers and celestial dragons. Issei recalled a recurring nightmare in which he appeared on the ground surrounded by fallen allies, and a voice told him that he had lost again. Albion explained that those nightmares were premonitions. The arrival of Enu was drawing near. Issei and Valley looked to where Albion pointed and were stunned by what they saw unfolding beside them. There was an echo of darkness, and beside it another echo of light. Valley wondered who those dragons were. Albion explained that those dragons were them and admired how the dragons readied themselves for battle, announcing that this was the moment when they were born. Drake affirmed that he was the dragon of darkness and Albion was the dragon of light. Albion called for attention and said that the story was beginning as they passed through a portal. Albion described a war between heaven and hell after the death of the first demon king. The 4 demon kings who succeeded him were driving the demons toward extinction and created a new being, a Nephilim. Issei asked what a Nephilim was. Drake explained that a Nephilim was the forbidden mix between demons and angels. The 4 demon kings had captured 4 powerful angels outside the archangels, and through a ritual they sacrificed those angels and took the lives of their captives to create a creature whose purpose was to slaughter everything in its path. Albion said that God did not want the war to annihilate all life, so he created Nephilim as well. He clarified that God made 2, one composed of 70% light and 30% darkness, and the other of 60% darkness and 40% light. Thus were born the Emperor of Shadows, Drake, and the Emperor of Light, Albion. Albion described Drake's original body as large as the Great Red, colored black with red inlays, crowned with 6 horns and 4 demonic wings. Albion's original body was snow white with golden inlays, equal in size to the Great Red, and had 4 golden angelic wings. Albion said that God sent them to fight and that they had won at a great cost. Drake added that God lay dying in the heavens. They decided to protect him, but he had other plans. Albion said God sealed their powers in the bodies they now occupied and told them that the power they were born with would only be released by whoever made the greatest sacrifice, the greatest of all. After those words, a light enveloped the 4 of them, and when they opened their eyes they found themselves on the floor of a hallway. Issei sat up groggy from the visions he had experienced. Valley looked perplexed and asked what Nove meant. Albion explained that Nove meant the star of the apocalypse, and that only their counterparts, Drake and Albion, could stop it. Issei asked why it was called Nova and what the letters meant. Drake offered a theory that they might be the initials of the 4 kings who had created the Nephilim, but said that the main point was that Nova would awaken soon. Albion stated that they needed to discover what God had meant by the greatest sacrifice. Valley asked why they did not investigate themselves. Drake said they could not. They had discovered that the awakening would require a bearer, not the dragon. Issei, overwhelmed, pressed his temples and looked at the floor. Albion announced that they would leave the others alone to rest for now. Drake said they needed more rest and suggested they would speak later. Albion said goodbye and they departed. Minutes of silence passed. Valley then spoke in a cold voice and gave a smile that suggested intent. He said he could not wait to destroy that thing. Issei, sharing that grim determination, said he also looked forward to an opponent who would test his limits. Valley responded with a challenge that he should not expect to be the one to kill it. Issei grew serious and told Valley that he wanted to ask a favor. Valley replied that he had a request as well, but then called for Kuroka to come out of hiding. Kuroka emerged, surprised to be found. Issei noted that her invisibility spell only concealed her sight, not her scent, which explained how they had located her, and gave her a friendly smile. Kuroka blushed and admitted she would improve. Valley observed that she was getting better with people and asked what Issei wanted to request. After a short exchange, Issei proposed a risky plan and promised to make amends if it succeeded. Kuroka reacted angrily to the nature of the plan and warned him that others would be affected. Issei insisted on the plan and promised compensation if his plan worked. Valley interrupted and demanded a response from Kuroka. Kuroka began to reply, but Valley's firm grip on her shoulder and a sharp look made her stop. Valley agreed to help, but on the condition that any unfinished business be concluded that night. Issei thanked him, relieved that the burden felt lighter, and asked Kuroka to assist him. Kuroka agreed on a condition. Issei must give hope to her sister and ensure that, no matter how much she suffered, her sister would one day be reunited with him and made happy. Issei accepted and turned to leave, reminding them that they should prepare because the time for the celebration was near. Valley warned Issei that when the time came he could not refuse Vala's request, and Issei agreed so long as Valley kept his side of the bargain. As Issei departed, Kuroka wiped her tears, thinking about Issei's promise. Valley commented that Issei was reckless but brave and that was admirable, then told Kuroka to change her clothes with a smile. Kuroka noted that it was the first time she had really seen Valley smile. She called on Issei not to fail, then disappeared through a teleportation circle. Meanwhile, Ria scolded the girls, saying she was very disappointed in them. Akino, Office, and Kaneko apologized. Rias accused them of having a date with Issei. Sona tried to explain that they had only helped with arrangements. Rias relented and said they should put it in the past. Then she insisted they change because they had ruined her birthday. Celebration. Ravel protested that Rias's birthday was tomorrow. Kiba added confusion, and the group learned that someone had used an amnesia powder on them so they would think it was Saturday. Asia asked why anyone would do that. Sona said it was because Rias did not like to celebrate her birthday. Akino recalled a past incident when Rias was 7 and a photo had made her the symbol of the Gremory family in the underworld. Sona revealed she had brought a copy of the photo. In the picture there was a young Rias in a wedding dress wearing poorly applied makeup and a small tiara. The other girls admired how beautiful she looked in the photo. Rias demanded to know why Sona had shown the picture, and Sona confessed that it was a small act of revenge for missing a family meeting. Rias, annoyed, said she could not stand Sona's family. The conversation escalated into playful bickering as the girls teased one another and tossed small items back and forth. Sona and Rias exchanged sharp glares. Sona insisted that her revenge and plan were not over and that it was time to change. Rias wondered what moment Sona meant. Sona replied with a dark look that Rias would see soon. Gasper mumbled that Kush made him nervous. After half an hour they were ready for the masquerade. Kaneko wore a white knee-length dress, and Kuroka wore the same style in black. Both retained their cat demon forms. Asia, Zenobia, and Irina wore bridal-style dresses with veils in white, blue, and gold. Ravel, Akino, and Office wore stucked red and black garments resembling kimonos. Rias wore a red and white dress that stood out among the guests. All of them at the party wore masks that revealed only their mouths. They were the only women in striking attire. The other female guests wore plain black and white dresses and the same masks. Asia asked why they had to wear the masks, and Sona only said they would see. Moments later, the ballroom filled with fox-like costumes and identical masks. The venue was a grand ceremonial hall populated by demons, angels, and fallen angels, with statues of Rias placed throughout. As soon as Rias arrived, the men donned their masks and began to dance with Sona's group and Lei Fei. Rias asked what this meant. Sona explained that Issei was somewhere in the crowd and that Rias had to find him. Every woman had an equal chance to be near him that night, and as a prize the winner would have a private audience with him. Rias reacted in stunned silence. Asia quietly hoped she might spend the evening with Issei, her eyes sparkling. Zenobia found the idea of an evening with Issei intriguing. Irina silently asked Michael for a blessing to help her find him. A brief pause followed as everyone prepared to search the crowd. Someone began to call out for them to wait. Akino wondered quietly about Issei. Ravel and Office felt excitement at the thought of spending the evening with Issei, their eyes shining. Rias asked what they were talking about. Kuroka asked if she could join in. Kaneko said she did not mind and was confident she would win. Rias told them to stop because it was her birthday. Sona apologized and said the party had already started. Le Fei and her group had already taken the lead. Everyone except Rias responded with a lively cheer. Rias complained that the plan was inhumane. Sona reminded her that they were not human. A few minutes later, the music began. As it played, the girls made space so Issei could choose who to dance with. Issei asked Saji why they were doing this. Saji explained that Kaichu wanted him to make Bush jealous. Issei asked what he should do. Saji told him to dance with everyone except Bush. Issei said he thought Sona actually wanted Bush to go after him. Saji suggested it might be more about teasing him than anything else. Issei laughed. Rias asked Sona what this meant. Sona explained the simple rules. Issei was somewhere in the crowd, and each girl had to search for him. All had an equal chance to be with him that night, and as a prize the winner would spend the evening alone with him and he would grant a single request. Asia imagined spending the whole night with Issei, her eyes lighting up. Zenobia thought a night with Issei sounded interesting. Irina asked Michael for his blessing so she could find him. Rias was at a loss. Aquino hesitated as the celebration began. Ravel and Ophis looked at one another with starry-eyed excitement about the evening. Rias asked what they were talking about. Kuroka asked to join in, and Kaneko said she did not mind and was quietly confident she would win. Rias reminded everyone that it was her birthday. Sona apologized but said the party had already started and urged the girls to hurry because Lu Fei's group had already taken the lead. The others agreed eagerly. Rias protested that this was unfair. Sona reminded her that they were not exactly ordinary humans. A few minutes later the music began. As the song played, everyone cleared space so Issei could choose a partner. Saji explained that Kaichu wanted him to stir up a little jealousy. He suggested that Issei dance with everyone except one particular person, and Issei accepted reluctantly, deciding to start with Kaneko. The group cheered and the dancing began. After a while, Sona instructed the girls that they could see their partners for 2 seconds. She snapped her fingers and the masks fell for that brief moment. Rias found herself paired with Razor. Asia was with Azazel. Aquino was with B.E.R.Z. Zenobia and Irina danced together. Ophis and Ravel paired up because there were not enough men. Kuroka was with Valley, and Lu Fei was with Biko. Rias noticed Razor and complained that he had shown up uninvited. Razor replied that the gathering was for demons and he had not intruded. Rias warned him not to get too forward or she would make sure Issei put him in his place, leaving Razor visibly uneasy. Zenobia and Irina bickered about who had ended up with whom, trading playful accusations. Ravel and Ophis both admitted they had hoped to dance with Issei and pouted, then brightened and suggested telling stories to pass the time. Azazel laughed at the lively atmosphere. Asia blushed at the teasing and the conversation moved on. Everyone laughed and continued with the festivities. B.E.R.Z joked about Issei's treatment of Asia, and Aquino teased her father in return. Kuroka and Valley exchanged a quiet, strategic conversation about their chances, agreeing that their plan depended on Issei's actions. Biko warned everyone to be ready for trouble, and Lu Fei promised to help prepare. Outside the hall, Issei and Kaneko shared a quiet moment. Any music was beautiful when they were together, and they simply enjoyed a gentle, tender dance. That quiet was abruptly broken by the sound of approaching danger. In a flash, Issei scooped Kaneko up and used his teleportation ability to return to the main hall. A moment later a loud explosion rocked the building. Rias asked in alarm what was happening. Issei reported that Valley had arrived as well. Valley urged everyone to move back and asked if Issei was ready. Issei and Valley activated their balance breakers at the same time, and their armors materialized. One of the hall's walls collapsed and a massive armored figure emerged, bearing fallen angel-like wings. The intruder introduced himself as Drake and declared their lives were at risk. Valley launched a powerful counterattack, firing a massive sphere of energy from his left arm while using his right hand to sap some of Drake's power. Drake raised his sword and dispelled the incoming energy, remarking that the sword felt stronger. He explained that his paired blades had been forged for a single purpose: to defeat them. He said the Omega blade absorbed ambient magic and converted it to his strength, and then he unleashed the Alpha blade. A red crescent of energy slammed into Valley with overwhelming force, throwing him through the hall. As Valley flew across the room, Issei darted forward to intercept Drake, ready to protect his friends and confront the threat. Drake and Azazel faced each other while Issei, having summoned Ascalon, ordered Azazel in a serious voice to leave with Rias and the others and take them to safety. Azazel protested that they were outnumbered and asked what reason Issei had for that request. Issei explained that Drake wielded a sword that absorbed magic, and since most of them relied on magic, including Azazel, the blade could also absorb physical energy. Judging by the other weapon's attack, Issei suspected that one weapon absorbed energy while the other released it multiplied, maybe twice or 3 times stronger, and he would not risk anyone getting hurt. Drake mocked Issei's caution but admitted the blade could indeed absorb energy, though not physical energy, and that alpha amplified absorbed power by a factor of 10, he added with sarcastic laughter. Rias expressed disbelief that such weapons could exist, while Aquino refused to retreat. Issei lunged with Ascalon. Drake blocked with Omega, and when Kiba, Zenobia, and Irina attacked from the right, Drake effortlessly blocked them with Alpha. Kaneko and Razor suddenly appeared and struck Drake's chest. Razor used a Phoenix Claw impact and Kaneko unleashed her maximum power, damaging part of Drake's armor. Vala materialized and grabbed Drake's right arm while the brown-haired fighter clung to his left. Issei called for their allies to act, and Sona accepted, saying she would be pleased to join the attack. Rias declared she would gladly take vengeance for her ruined celebration. All the demons in the area unleashed their strongest attacks in a coordinated assault that sent Drake flying. He thought it impossible as he was driven back through the air. Rosweiss attacked from behind and knocked him to the ground. She remarked that she had expected a tougher fight. Drake laughed weakly, admitting he had underestimated them. Azazel reminded Issei and Valley that if they had been ordered to withdraw earlier, it had been for a reason and he wanted to hear that reason. The group explained the story the celestial dragons had told them. Rias found the revelation incredible. Ravel noted that it contradicted the supposed heroic acts of the first successors of the great demon king Lucifer. Asia asked why, if God had created the dragons and died, people claimed he had been murdered. Draig and Albion confessed that they had fabricated the lie, erased the memories of the old angels, and staged a titanic battle to disguise the truth of God's death. For centuries they had fought each other so the rumor would become accepted as history. Azazel understood, but warned that if the truth came out it would undermine trust in the words of the demon kings and the leaders of the angels and fallen angels. Rias asked how Drake had survived the onslaught. Drake revealed that surviving had been part of a plan and announced that this was the dragon's first defeat. Only a few steps remained before the awakening. Suddenly, whips erupted from the ground and unleashed a brutal assault that caused severe injuries. Many of the fighters collapsed and lost consciousness. Issei and Valley had protected the Gremry group, Kuroka, and Lu Fei so they remained conscious. Issei called urgently for Asia. Asia responded and formed a large dome of energy that began healing the wounded. A woman named May appeared with a floating humanoid creature resembling a black titan with red eyes, many tentacles, and both demonic and angelic wings, a green gem glowing on its form. May introduced herself and declared that it was time for them to die. Vala prepared to respond. May handed a recording to Drake and said she would finish his work. He consented. Aquino urged everyone to act, and the women charged and released a barrage of powers. Drake thanked them as his sword absorbed the energy. Issei told the others to fall back and insisted he would handle the rest. Kiba, Zenobia, and Irina launched themselves at Drake, but he warned May that he had absorbed too much power and could not move. May grabbed a chain attached to the creature. The creature lashed out with a tentacle, and the 3 attackers were thrown against a wall. Kiba struck the ground hard and suffered broken bones, while Zenobia and Irina were critically injured when they collided with metal supports and lost consciousness. Issei teleported to them and hearing Valley call for retreat because they could not continue without assistance, cut the supports with Ascalon and carried the injured to Asia. Asia told Issei she was exhausted and could not keep going. Issei urged her to hold on. Kaneko, Rosweiss, and Aquino then fell from the sky. May laughed tauntingly. Drake told Issei to focus and warned he would be incapacitated for a few more minutes. May cracked the chain like a whip and commanded the creature to fire a beam of energy. Ophis intervened, meeting the beam with a violet blast that collided with the creature's power. Issei complimented Ophis and, together with Asia, carried Kaneko, Rosweiss, and Aquino. Rosweiss asked Issei to set her down. She said she had an idea. Issei carefully lowered her to the ground. Asia warned her strength was nearly gone. Issei urged patience. Rias and Ravel joined to help, and Ophis combined her energy with Rias's power and Ravel's abilities. Their combined assault struck with such force that the creature dug into the ground to avoid being thrown away. May admitted she may have grown overconfident. Drake, acknowledging the same mistake, accelerated toward them and unleashed a crescent moon attack. Valle met him, and their powers collided in a massive explosion. Drake prepared a second, more ominous technique, gathering energy in a circle to launch a devastating beam. The battle continued. Alpha sliced through the air. The attack was aimed straight at them. Valle could not confront it, so he dodged and managed to reduce the attack's power by half. A large explosion burst before Rias. The brown-haired man rushed to her side. Issei shifted into Gale's Dragonic Tower mode, using his body to block the explosion, but he could not stop all of its force. Rias cried out in pain. Although he absorbed most of it, the remaining power knocked the redhead unconscious and left her seriously wounded but not in critical condition. At that moment Issei carried the unconscious Rias and teleported to where Asia was. The blast had been so strong that it shattered much of his armor. His right arm was badly hurt and he could not move from the pain. Issei urged Asia to take his power as a final effort. Asia took his left arm and he transferred part of his strength to her. The protective dome around Asia expanded and most wounds healed, but the people inside the dome remained unconscious. Asia managed to say that she had done it and then fainted. Issei told her to rest. She had earned it. Valle ordered Hudo to go after Kuroka and Lufei and told the others he would hold the enemy. Issei began to say he was exhausted, but he could not finish because the monster launched an attack with its left hand. Issei shouted no as a purple aura surrounded the creature and caused it to halt. They recognized the aura as Gasper's. Gasper reassured Issei and promised to stop it. Rosweiss explained that she had been delayed because she had to pull Gasper out of the rubble. Kiba unleashed a flurry of swords that pinned the monster to the ground. Kuroka and Lu Fei fired massive spheres of energy at the creature. Razor created a magic circle beneath the monster, wrapping it in flames. A cold, dark voice interrupted, warning them not to celebrate victory yet. May cried out for her master. Issei asked who it was. The voice introduced himself as Absalom. Razor trembled in fear. Valle asked who the newcomer was. Razor explained that Absalom was the son of Morgana, their greatest enemy. Absalom declared himself Morgana's son and ordered them to disappear. In an instant he swept his hand and sent Razor and Valle flying. Razor collided with the monster and was struck by a tentacle, smashing into a wall and losing consciousness. Kuroka and Lu Fei prepared their most powerful attacks, but before they could release them, Absalom grabbed them by the throats. He taunted them, and Kuroka cursed weakly as they were choked. Valle sped in and struck Absalom, who released them. They were unconscious from lack of oxygen. Valle carried them back to where Issei was recovering. Absalom commanded Drake and May to finish the job, and they obeyed. Valle told Hudo to take care of the wounded, and Issei agreed. May tightened a chain and, slowly, the monster began to move. Gasper watched in disbelief as the creature resisted his time-stopping power. Kiba warned Issei that the situation was bad. The creature of Enova shook free of the time effect. One arm glowed with a sinister aura and launched a decisive strike meant to finish Issei. The attack advanced unimpeded, coming within centimeters of him as his friend's pained cries echoed, unable to intervene. For Issei, time seemed to stop. He could not move, only think. 1,000 thoughts rushed through his mind until he suddenly found himself in a vast, pitch-dark room where he could barely see his hand. He stood in silence until a familiar voice asked how much he loved them. Issei asked who spoke. The voice demanded that he answer how much he loved all of them. Then, as if in a dream, all of his companions appeared around him and embraced him. Issei, overcome with emotion, thought through his love for each of them and admitted that he loved them more than his own life and could not imagine living without any of them. Tears came. From the deepest darkness, the dragon Drake emerged. B.E.R.Z explained that the ultimate sacrifice was both an act of kindness and of cruelty. It could open gates to immense power but would bring unbearable pain, a burden so great that even death might not grant relief. B.E.R.Z said he would share that sacrifice with Issei in this life. Issei asked what B.E.R.Z meant. B.E.R.Z told him to decide with his heart whether to save them and suffer or to live and let them die. He urged Issei to choose with feeling rather than reason. Issei paused, then made his choice. Back in the battlefield, the creature's hand hovered inches from Issei's face. May prepared a deadly attack, but at that moment Issei's body erupted in a red aura that shot toward the sky. The others reacted in shock at the immense power he now wielded. Vala praised him, confident they could win. Kiba commended Issei as well. Rosweiss began to say that victory was near but stopped when she saw Issei crying. Issei apologized to his friends in turn. He asked Asia's forgiveness for not inviting her on another date. He expressed regret to Ravel for being unable to attend her celebration or to dance through the night with her. He told Zenobia he was sorry for not being able to promise the future she hoped for right now. He offered these apologies from the heart as the red aura continued to search. Issei apologized to Irina for not being able to go on the date she had wanted, told Akino that she knew his true intentions and that it would remain their secret, reminded Kaneko that he would always care for her, warned Ophis not to lose control since he would not be there to stop her, and conveyed to Rias that he loved her deeply and would rather sacrifice himself than see her harmed. Rosweiss, startled, asked what he was saying. Issei asked Rosweiss to take care of the others. Rosweiss reacted with disbelief and confusion. Issei said that there was nothing left to say and that it was time to end things. As he said those words, the red aura rising into the sky shifted to an intense black that brought a chill of fear and desolation. Issei activated his balance breaker, and a black sphere formed around him and shot toward the monster. May countered, pulling on a chain that made the creature roar. The monster fired a powerful beam from its chest, a blast called Enu, while May laughed wildly. The blast struck the sphere surrounding the brown-haired youth. The sphere swelled, changing into a black dragon with red eyes. The dragon roared and dispelled the monster's collected energy. The onlookers reacted in stunned silence. Kiba noted the incredible power. Gasper marveled at Issei and believed he could win. The dragon landed and struck the monster, its right limb driving into the creature's torso while its left limb reached for May. May taunted that defeating the battle would not win the war, then broke her chain. The monster glowed and latched its tentacles around the dragon as a gem began to sound a countdown. 30. May laughed again. Valley warned Hudo to stay back. Rias, waking and disoriented, asked Rosweiss what was happening as she watched the dragon struggle to free itself. Rosweiss identified the dragon as Issei. The dragon turned toward Rias. Its eyes changed and a free limb reached in her direction. The gem continued its countdown, 10, 6. When one of the dragon's claws made contact with Rias, she felt a sudden, protective embrace from behind. From the dragon came Issei's final message. He did not want her to resent him for his choice. He had chosen to give his life rather than let her die. Rias could not hold back her tears and began to sob. Someone pulled her back by the waist, but when Rias turned there was no one there. She screamed at the dragon in anguish. The dragon answered the threat with a fierce strike that slammed into the monster's face, and a dark aura swirled around the creature. The gem counted down 2, then 1. In an instant, the dragon and the monster vanished, leaving a vast crater where they had stood. A stunned silence followed. Gasper and Kiba approached Rias and asked where Issei had gone. Rias, shaken, said that he had left. Kiba fell to his knees and let his sword drop. Kaneko woke with a weak, tearful voice and begged for it not to be true. Rias confirmed that Issei had died saving them. Kaneko, overwhelmed, called him an idiot and collapsed into Rias's arms, sobbing. Rias, consumed by grief, cried out Issei's name in anguish. A year passed since Issei's death and the destruction of the Zeta monster. Vale, Lefei, and Kuroka had been living with them since then. Kuroka said it was for everyone's well-being and that they would be better together. Tomorrow was Busha's birthday, but from the previous night no one had wanted to leave the brown-haired one's room. For a year the room had remained exactly as it was the day they lost Issei. All the girls clung to Rias. Since Issei's passing, Rias and the others rarely attended the academy. Missions were handled by Rosweiss, Kiba, and Gasper, and there were times when days passed without the others eating. B.E.R.Z called to his sister. They remained silent, lying together on the bed, wrapped in each other's arms. When B.E.R.Z entered, he saw their tear-streaked faces and the hollow sorrow in their eyes. He told Rias that there were problems. Some creatures had escaped, and Azazel required the full participation of her group. Rias remained enveloped in grief. Bush only turned and continued to cry. B.E.R.Z spoke with the gravity of his role as king, insisting that the situation demanded their attention. She could not finish what she was going to say. Rias answered in fury that she had lost the only thing that gave meaning to her life and that she no longer had the will to fight or even to go on living. B.E.R.Z told Rias to listen, explaining that Issei had gone away but that he would not have wanted her to remain in that state. Rias acknowledged it but questioned what use that knowledge was if all it left her with was pain, insisting that it was all he had left them. Everyone reacted to Bush's words. Ravel, addressing Lord Lucifer with respect, begged to be left alone and said they had already suffered and fought enough. Ravel then embraced Rias and helped her lie down again. B.E.R.Z warned that monsters had escaped and that Azazel was currently confronting one of them. He explained that it was a creature like the one that had killed Issei. Everyone was stunned by B.E.R.Z's revelation. Rias asked what he meant. B.E.R.Z explained that months earlier the Zeta creature had returned. Aquino responded that that thing had died with Issei, but B.E.R.Z countered that while Issei had died alone, his death had not been in vain. They had discovered that the creatures came in a set of 8 alpha, omega, delta, beta, gamma, zeta, epsilon, and eta. Zeta and most of them had escaped, but one had stayed to fight. The one called Delta, also known as the Kraken, a massive beast. An army of 10,000 warriors, demons, angels, and fallen angels had joined forces to confront it and had only managed to immobilize it after a monumental clash presented in broad, epic terms. Ravel asked how 9 of them could possibly hope to defeat such a force. B.E.R.Z replied that they had Ophis on their side and looked toward her. Ophis, expressionless, wondered what she could do. B.E.R.Z asked Ophis to help by keeping the creature distracted while they prepared a trap, clarifying that he was not asking her to defeat it alone but simply to buy time. B.E.R.Z then spoke to Rias not as her king but as her brother, insisting that her servants needed her help. Zenobia asked what he meant, and B.E.R.Z explained that their companions had gone with Azazel to try to stop the creature. Asia confirmed that they had gone to face it. B.E.R.Z affirmed that Azazel and their friends were currently engaged with the beast. Rias demanded why he had let them go, and B.E.R.Z said he could not stop them. He added that Valley and his group were on their way but would be delayed. They needed Rias's awakening and her strength. B.E.R.Z urged her to choose between living and dying, warning that time was short before he left. After he was gone, several minutes of silence passed until Asia stood up. Asia announced that she would be back. Rias asked if she was going. Asia confirmed she was going. Kaneko asked why. Asia wiped her tears and explained that she had already lost Issei and did not want to lose anyone else. Irina volunteered to go with her. Aquino agreed as well, saying this was an opportunity to honor Issei. Kaneko asked them to wait. Ravel offered to join, and Ophis reminded everyone that she was the key to the plan. Asia asked Bush if she was coming. Rias remained silent and lay back down, overwhelmed and confused about giving them the strength to keep fighting. A voice addressed her as the mighty Rias Gremory. Rias, frightened and still crying, asked who was there. The voice challenged her resolve and asked how she planned to honor Issei's memory if she was weak. When Rias declared that she had nothing to lose, the voice warned her not to condemn their friends. The sword suddenly appeared at Rias's throat, and she caught sight of the face behind it. She thought it was Issei, but the voice insisted Issei had died because of her. Rias begged for forgiveness. The sword lunged and in that instant, she shut her eyes. When she opened them, she realized it had been a dream. Rias pleaded inwardly for Issei's forgiveness, desperate and uncertain of what to do. Meanwhile, along a vast coastal cliff, Kiba and Azazel fought the Kraken. Azazel directed the team to target the attacking tentacles while Rosweiss focused on the supportive limbs and Gasper prepared. Gasper struggled to gather the energy needed to stop such a massive creature. Kiba rushed along the tentacles, closing in on the beast's face as Rosweiss struck supportive limbs with her strongest attacks and Azazel unleashed multiple spears of light, all while nursing damaged armor. Azazel noted that their assaults kept failing to fell the creature. Kiba used his rising sword power to create 1,000 blades that struck the Kraken's left eye. Rosweiss followed with an immense strike that made the Kraken stagger, but it did not fall. Gasper then used his power to freeze time, immobilizing the Kraken. Azazel ordered them to hold the position, but a navy blue gem on the Kraken's forehead flared and neutralized Gasper's ability. The wounds on the creature began to close and it swelled with renewed strength. As the Kraken readied a swipe, a bolt of lightning struck the wound Kiba had made, and a gentle green aura spread around the allies. Asia arrived and began to heal the injured. Kaneko made a dry remark about party invitations. Zenobia and Irina moved up to demonstrate their strength. Azazel encouraged the Gremory team to finish the creature. Zenobia and Irina's blades ran along the tentacles, causing significant damage. Ravel summoned a massive sphere of phoenix fire that forced the Kraken to reel. Kaneko fell from above and slammed into the creature's chest, causing it to stagger. Azazel observed that, while none of them were at full strength, their combined effort would suffice for the moment. Kiba asked what he meant. Azazel explained that the team was only showing a fraction of their true power because Issei had become the key to unlocking their fullest abilities. For example, he said, the energy sphere Ophis was preparing should have been far larger. Kiba looked up and saw Ophis and Rosweiss forming an enormous sphere with enough force to devastate a city. Rosweiss signaled that they were ready and urged Ophis to release the attack, but Ophis hesitated because the others remained too close. Suddenly a tentacle snatched Ophis from behind and dragged her to the ground. The sphere fell and the Kraken deflected it toward Aquino. Aquino tried to evade the blast, but a massive explosion occurred and she vanished from sight. The team cried out in shock. Azazel, enraged, called for forgiveness from Barakiel in a moment of furious resolve and summoned his armor to cut the tentacle restraining Ophis. The Kraken retaliated with a brutal strike that shattered his armor and knocked him unconscious. Kiba shouted for their mentor. The others rushed to protect Azazel while Asia worked to heal him, but the Kraken struck again. Ophis said she could not win without Issei. Ravel lashed out at the idea that Issei had left them, lamenting the cost of his actions. Irina admitted they could not manage alone. Asia pleaded that first Issei, then Aquino, this could not be happening. The group fell to their knees and wept. Before the Kraken's next blow could land, a shadowy attack struck the creature and forced it to recoil. Kaneko recognized that power as belonging to Bush. Rias, consumed by grief, unleashed a barrage of furious assaults and declared that it was for Aquino, but a tentacle toppled her and Azazel. Rias reflected that the legends were true. This was a being capable of surpassing even gods. Rosweiss asked Bush how such power could be possible. Rias begged Rosweiss to tell her whether Aquino had suffered in her final moments, and Rosweiss fell silent. Rias read that silence as an answer, sank her hands into the earth, and wept, saying she could not win without him. Azazel, still conscious enough to speak, called to Rias and ordered that they evacuate the others. Rias began to respond, uncertain how to proceed. Rias insisted that they could not leave him, that they had to take him because he was gravely hurt. Azazel interrupted her by placing a hand on her shoulder. Azazel reminded Rias of what Issei had said that day, that he might lose the fight but it would be the beginning of winning the war. He told her he would accept losing the fight so that she could win the war, and he asked her to promise she would not give up for Issei, for Aquino, and for him. He stood, extended his wings, and declared himself the governor of the fallen angels before flying toward the Kraken. The Kraken struck back with a powerful blue beam aimed at Azazel, and Azazel vanished in the light. Rias could not stop herself from crying out. The others shouted that their teacher had fallen as hundreds of black feathers drifted to the ground. Rias thought of Issei, the man she loved and would continue to love, of Aquino, her best friend and dear sister, and of the man who had supported her when things went wrong. She could not imagine winning without her friends and family. Kneeling, she closed her eyes and silently hoped she would soon be with them. The Kraken's claw loomed over them, and, seeing Azazel gone, the group braced for the end. A tremendous roar filled the air, and when Rias opened her eyes they found themselves at the edge of a cliff nearby. Rias was cradled in Aquino's arms, and everyone else lay on the ground, bewildered to be alive. Aquino wiped away tears and scolded Rias not to be so reckless. Rias, startled, asked how Aquino could be alive. Aquino indicated a man nearby and said that he was the reason. The man wore torn black jeans, black boots, and a dark jacket draped over his shoulders. His long black hair reached to the middle of his back, and he wore a white mask reminiscent of a hollow warrior's transform. A cold voice and a malign aura surrounded him as he asked if they were all right. He introduced himself as Darks, supreme leader of the Mercenary Legion, also known as the Legion of Destruction. Aquino asked if his mercenaries could handle the monster. Darks answered that he could, but warned that his help would come at a price. Rias, exhausted but determined, agreed and accepted the cost. Darks raised his hand to the sky and ordered his legion to advance. 5 girls materialized beside him from a magic circle. Darks assigned Ami to deal with the Kraken's tentacles. Ami, a compact warrior with white short hair and red eyes, wore fitted black pants, a red jacket, and boots. She carried a large sword and, in an instant, appeared at the Kraken's forehead and, with a sweeping strike, severed most of its tentacles. The Kraken flung Ami through the air, leaving her in danger. Darks then told Sora to act. Sora, who bore a resemblance to Ravel with a blue and red dress and white hair, launched herself at the Kraken. A golden light manifested and formed into a large fox spirit. Rias and Asia watched as Aquino explained that the creature was a Cubi, one of the legendary demons said to be among the firstborn in the underworld. The enormous fox collided with the Kraken, forcing it to retreat. The fox's claws struck the tentacle the beast had been using to steady itself, causing it to lose its grip. Ami thanked Sora, and Sora told Ami to climb onto the fox's head and wait for orders. Darks then commanded Shijun to capture the Kraken. Shijun floated into the air. She wore a dress with armor-like elements, had shoulder-length green hair and matching eyes, and summoned a surge of lightning. Bolts struck the Kraken, forcing it to release its other hold and stumble toward the cliff edge. Shijun proclaimed that the sea would remember this day, and as she invoked greater power, the ocean itself opened briefly. From the rift, shadowy figures emerged and dragged the Kraken down into a dark void. The rift closed as if it had never existed. The Cubi reverted to its original form, and the 3 girls returned to their master. Darks ordered Haruno to heal the injured. Haruno, a cat-like spirit in a kimono with long blonde hair, approached and used her power to tend to the wounded. Rias, losing consciousness from exhaustion, whispered to Aquino that she felt she had seen Darks before. Days later, at Issei's house, Rias woke up. Asia cried with relief to see her awake. Rias, disoriented, asked what had happened. The Kraken, Aquino, B.E.R.Z. Asia explained that Rias had fainted 3 days earlier and that they had feared she might not wake. Aquino had stayed by her side, sleeping in a chair. Asia told Rias that Darks had stopped time and saved both Aquino and Azazel, and that Darks' team had confined the Kraken in Tartarus, the prison of the underworld. Rias asked where Darks was now, and Asia said that he was with Ophis. Rias repeated, surprised, that he was with Ophis. Asia was asked what she was doing, and she replied that it did not matter as long as everyone was okay. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Ami and Kiba faced each other in a sword duel. Kiba attempted a desperate strike aimed at Ami's back, but Ami smoothly evaded and countered with a precise, non-graphic blow that left Kiba stunned. Zenobia observed that Ami had 27 victories to Kiba's 3 while sharpening her Durandal, and she smiled with excitement. Irina prepared to take her turn and manifested her weapon. Kiba accepted his earlier defeat with a respectful bow. Ami suggested she was tired of using rebellion and asked to change swords. With a shouted command, Ascalon appeared from a magical portal instead. The three of them were surprised to see the new blade. Kiba touched Ascalon in astonishment while Ami revealed that her husband had left it with her to keep until he returned. The others fell silent, contemplating Ami's words about her husband. In the courtyard, Sora amused herself by teasing Ravel and Kaneko while holding them with one of her four tails. Ravel and Kaneko protested their discomfort and embarrassment. Sora reminded them that they had lost a game and therefore had to follow her instructions. After a short struggle, Sora led the reluctant Ravel and Kaneko toward the bath. A brief bridge of quiet followed as events shifted elsewhere. In Kuroka's room, Haruno encouraged relaxation through acupuncture, but Kuroka complained that needles in her tail were far from soothing and eventually fled the bed. Lu Fei said she felt odd and Haruno tried to comfort them as they neared the end of the treatment. Haruno then noticed a photograph that showed Issei with Kaneko and Kuroka in a casual pose suggesting a past closeness. Lu Fei identified Issei as someone who had once intended to be Kuroka's sister's boyfriend. Haruno, flushed with emotion, revealed quietly that Issei was her husband. Lu Fei reacted with surprise. In the living room, Darks and Ophis floated in trance as if suspended in the air. Valley fretted that Azazel's task was taking longer than expected. What had been promised as an hour was now 3. Azazel reassured him that Rosweiss was ensuring Ophis's safety and told Valley to focus on winning the board game. Shijun teased that Azazel seemed to enjoy monopolizing the game. The discussion drifted to surnames when Shijun recognized the name Hayaru and realized she had met someone with that surname months earlier. Azazel explained that the previous owner of the house had died a year ago and revealed his name had been Issei. Shijun reacted emotionally and excused herself to think, remembering how a boy had fallen from the sky a year ago and how she and the others had saved him. She recalled that 3 months prior he had said he would come to this house, and tears welled in her eyes as the realization settled in. Inside Dark's mind, he spoke to Ophis about the impending return of the Black Dragon and asked for her help when that time came. Ophis accepted gratefully and then, together, they prepared to return to consciousness. A soft light grew and took the form of a woman who resembled Rosweiss but with pale blue hair and a pristine white dress. Darks confirmed that they were ready to return, and Yumi, obedient to her master, activated the collar that glowed and transported them. When they opened their eyes, 5 girls who had defeated the Kraken surrounded Darks' sword. Behind Ophis stood Valley and his group, along with Rias and members of the occult team. Rias suddenly fainted and appeared to float. Darks told the girls to explain everything and then passed into unconsciousness. The other girls complied and began to recount events. Kiba asked about Bush, and Ami explained that some bodies remained inert while their minds were contained within a mysterious collar called the Spirit. Zenobia asked what the girls were expected to tell them. Haruno, flustered and eager, wondered whether they should first explain the balance breaker or disclose that they had married Issei. The assembled group listened in tense silence, waiting for the revelations that the Spirit would hold. They stood in an astral plane with a white background and a glass dome surrounding them. Rias asked why he had brought her there. Darks explained in detail that Issei Hayaru was not dead. He had disappeared 3 months ago. They did not know where he was, but the evidence suggested he was all right. Darks noted that the collar Yumi wore, called Spirit, remained intact. When Master Issei suffered severe damage, the collar would crack, and if he died it would be destroyed. Because it showed no change, Issei did not appear to be in immediate danger. Rias asked how Darks could be so sure. Darks said that more than a year ago, when Issei fell from the sky, those girls from beyond had saved his life. Rias asked why he had not returned. Darks replied that Issei had no memories of his past. He had lost his memory in exchange for the power to save her. The Master Issei had rescued Rias and those girls, but at the cost of his memories. Rias could only be surprised by Darks's words. Darks then produced a gem from his pocket that lit the chamber. When the light faded, Issei appeared standing before her. Issei spoke Issei's name to identify Rias Gremry. Rias reacted in shock and tried to reach out, but when she tried to touch him her hand passed through him. Darks clarified that this was not the Master Issei but a hologram, a recorded message. The holographic Issei conveyed that B.E.R.Z had sent her servants, led by B.E.R.Z, and that they would obey her orders until his return. He added that if anything was needed, B.E.R.Z and the girls would do everything in their power to help. B.E.R.Z spoke in a cold, emotionless tone. Until he finished his message, and the hologram flickered out as the light vanished. B.E.R.Z wondered what that meant. B.E.R.Z explained that they were her new servants, at least until his master returned. B.E.R.Z accepted, saying that if Issei requested it she would comply. B.E.R.Z smiled behind his mask, though B.E.R.Z could not see it, and stated that it was time to return. He asked B.E.R.Z not to be surprised by what her new servants would tell her and assured her that the other girls would explain what had happened. B.E.R.Z snapped his fingers, a flash of light dazzled B.E.R.Z, and when she opened her eyes she found a chaotic scene. Kaneko and Ravel were engaged in a fast-paced, anime-style skirmish with Sora, exchanging quick, non-lethal blows. Haruno was dashing away from Ophis through sweeping movements. Ami and Zenobia were locked in a determined sparring match. Asia and Irina sat on the sofa, tearful and shaken. Shijun, Kuroka, Lefei, Vale, and Azazel were gathered in the kitchen while Akino quietly served tea. Yumi remained alone in the room, looking unsettled. B.E.R.Z asked what was happening. Asia ran into B.E.R.Z's arms, clinging to her for comfort. B.E.R.Z repeated her confusion aloud, clearly distressed, while the girls from B.E.R.Z's group watched with small smiles. Sora recounted the beginning. She said that at first Issei only cared about training to become stronger, and at that time Shijun had been the leader. Ami remembered a particular night during a storm when they had all gathered in Issei's room and silently watched the rain fall. Haruno recalled that Issei had covered Yumi with his jacket, given his shirt to Sora, shared his only blanket with Shijun and Haruno, and held Ami until the storm passed. Shijun added that after hours the storm still raged and darkness had settled. Issei had summoned a dark gauntlet set with a red gem that pulsed with an aura, and he had asked them to come closer. Yumi explained that when they approached, the aura shifted and the room filled with a warm, protective feeling, as if Issei's heart were shielding them. From that day, the five of them decided to commit to Issei so he would always be by their side, and they named him leader of their group. Sora noted that he had always been special with them and never left without telling them where he was going, at least until now. B.E.R.Z struggled to understand how they could have married him. Ami described the wedding as NTMT and unconventional, held in the middle of the jungle. Kaneko muttered that the group were perverts. Akino excused herself and left the room, and B.E.R.Z said there was no need for further comment. After Akino departed, B.E.R.Z asked where Gasper, Kiba, and Rosweiss were. Azazel reported that they had gone on a special mission. When B.E.R.Z asked for details, Azazel said they had taken the sword Ascalon to examine it. B.E.R.Z asked with concern why they had done that. Valley explained that Ascalon remained linked to Issei, so by using the sword they hoped to track him across dimensions. B.E.R.Z agreed but insisted that when the mission was over, the sword be returned to Ami, since Issei had left it in her care. Azazel gave his word. B.E.R.Z then set out to find Akino. After half an hour of searching, she found Akino lying on Issei's bed, curled up and silently crying while clutching a torn white dress. B.E.R.Z entered the room slowly and called Akino's name. Akino demanded to be left alone, her voice breaking as sparks of energy danced around her in a tense, anime-like display. B.E.R.Z, unsettled and worried, asked what was wrong, noting that they had just learned Issei was still alive and wondering why Akino seemed not to care. Akino snapped that it was none of B.E.R.Z's business. B.E.R.Z replied that because Akino was her friend and her servant, it was her concern. Akino fell silent for a moment, and B.E.R.Z hugged her gently from behind. B.E.R.Z told her to cry as much as she needed, admitting that perhaps she might feel similar pain. Akino turned to face B.E.R.Z, tears in her eyes, and unleashed her frustration. She demanded to know why she could never step out of B.E.R.Z's shadow, why the world adored the sweet, perfect B.E.R.Z, the Crimson President, while Akino seemed only ever to be the one standing beside her. B.E.R.Z listened as Akino explained what had happened a year before, the afternoon Issei had been alone with her. Akino said that Issei had told her he loved her and that he loved them all, that he would never forget them, and that ever since meeting B.E.R.Z his life had lost its own meaning and depended on them. Rias asked what troubled her, and Aquino confessed that Issei had forgotten her in time but not Rias. She said he had forgotten that she loved him, that she wanted to be his partner in every sense, the one he would see when he closed and opened his eyes. Aquino had decided she and Issei would remain with Rias and the others until he decided who he would stay with. She had waited a year, suffering and hoping for an answer, only to learn that he remembered Rias alone and had been claimed by her. The pain of that realization had become unbearable for Aquino. Aquino cried with a trembling voice as she leaned against Rias's lap. Rias comforted Aquino and told her to calm down. Rias said that they would see him again, that they would see his smile, his foolishness, and his quirks, and that he had not forgotten them because he had wanted to. She reached for hope in those memories. Aquino questioned what Rias meant, and Rias recounted the message that Darks had shown her. Aquino asked why he only remembered Rias, and Darks said that he could answer that. Rias asked Darks what he was doing there, and Darks told Rias that she should not believe she had been the only one to receive a message from the Master. He showed Aquino an orb. Aquino asked what it was as the orb began to glow and projected a hologram. The image showed a scene from a year before, when Aquino had been crying and Issei had been comforting her. Rias looked at the projection in bewilderment. Darks explained that 5 months earlier the Master Issei had made a pact with a voodoo practitioner in exchange for recovering an artifact that the practitioner had lost. In return, the practitioner would help him recover his memories. Aquino asked what happened next, and Darks said that the Master searched for the artifact day and night without rest. The Master did what he could. A month later the ritual was ready and the practitioner restored some of his memories. A few days after, he began to imagine seeing them again and stopped leaving his room, spending days remembering his life before he had stepped away. But bargains often carry consequences. The deal with the practitioner restricted his ability to use certain powers. The Master lost most of his abilities. A few days earlier he had told Darks that he had found someone who knew where the artifact was, and 5 days ago Darks received a package containing orbs, each with an addressee and a letter instructing them to come and to make Darks their servant as well. Rias asked where Issei was. Darks said he did not know, but that the Master had asked them not to search for him and that he would come when his mission was finished. Aquino struggled to understand the meaning of the image. Darks said that the image was merely a cover and that the message would truly begin when Rias and Darks left the room. He approached the door and addressed Miss Gremory, saying they were leaving. Rias wished them luck and left. As soon as the door closed, a light filled the room. When Aquino closed her eyes, she found herself in a place that looked like an expansive garden of green fields under a clear sky with a soft breeze. Aquino recognized the place as the Gremory clan grounds. Aquino asked why she was there, puzzled. Suddenly a familiar voice told her that he had been waiting. Issei embraced Aquino from behind. Aquino turned and was surprised to see who had hugged her. She smiled in a way she had not in more than a year, a smile of happiness. Issei said that he had chosen the place because it reminded him of her. Aquino questioned how he could be here when he had been missing. Issei admitted that he had done many foolish things for someone he loved, and that one of those choices had separated part of his mind from his body. Aquino worried that it could have killed him. Issei said it had been a risk he accepted for her, and then invited her to walk with him. They walked together and sat beneath a nearby tree. Issei lay with his head in Aquino's lap. Aquino asked why he had not returned when he regained his memory. Issei explained that if he had come back, the practitioner would have tracked him, and he could not put her and the others in danger even if his absence caused them pain. Aquino confessed how many nights she had cried over her perceived weakness and how much she had missed him, her tears falling on his face. Issei asked her to remember what he had told her that day when she had. Aquino recalled his words. Issei said that because they had chosen to love him and be with him despite the consequences, he would stay with them until he had to make a final choice. He admitted he still feared making that decision and asked for her forgiveness for the suffering he had caused. Aquino replied that the suffering was over, that the storm had ended and calm had begun. Issei thanked her. Back in the room, Rias asked what the light was that had come from the other chamber. Darks explained that the Master had divided his mind into several fragments and that one of those fragments was inside the orb. He reassured Rias that the fragment was like someone asleep and would be fine. Rias reacted with concern, saying that splitting the mind was a risky measure. Darks agreed, saying the master had been aware of the danger but had succeeded. Rias said she would take the girls shopping and that with the new servants she should meet them. Darks said he would stay to watch until the message ended and the occupant emerged. Rias left the room. Darks quietly apologized to Aquino. Ophis asked who was apologizing, Darks or the other, and Darks said it was none of her concern but that he would stay if she did not mind. Ophis sat beside the masked man and said she did not mind and asked to accompany him. Darks observed that, for now, Ophis was the only one who had noticed his secret and asked her not to tell anyone. Ophis agreed and said they only had to wait for Issei to return. Darks reflected that in a way Issei was both present and absent. Ophis asked what he meant. Darks explained that he was using the master's body as an intermediary to deliver the message and to glimpse his former life once more. Ophis listened, noting that his voice lacked emotion and sounded somehow sad. She felt that something had changed in him during his absence. Shortly after Aquino received Issei's message, Rias gathered the other girls in the living room and waited for Aquino to wake so they could go to the mall. An hour later, Rias announced to the group that it was time to go shopping. Ami responded enthusiastically that she had been waiting since she arrived for Rias to make up her mind. Asia informed everyone that Aquino and Ophis would not be joining them. Rias doubted that, glanced toward the stairs, and wondered about the orb as Asia took her hand. Rias could only sigh and nod. At the mall, Rias asked Kaneko to go to the club and bring some documents from the desk. Kaneko agreed respectfully, and Rias said they should begin shopping. The girls all nodded and entered the stores, buying whatever they liked. At the club, Kaneko excitedly found the documents, but her expression changed when she saw the folder cover bearing the name Darks. Inside were files about a man believed to be dead, a figure who had disappeared during the pursuit of relics and who was rumored to possess 3 Nova artifacts Epsilon, Beta, and Eta whose locations were unknown. The familiar presence brushed past her and vanished at the door. When Kaneko stepped outside, she noticed Darks's mask lying by the entrance. Kaneko sensed Issei's presence in the mask and felt her heart fill with hope. She chased a shadow that moved farther away, sprinting until she reached an open field where a man stood. The man asked why she was following him. Kaneko cried out that the last person to use the mask had been Issei and demanded to know where he was, a tear rolling down her cheek. The man challenged her to learn the truth by defeating him, and the mask flew from Kaneko's hands to his face. Kaneko prepared for a fight and released a burst of energy. The man accepted the challenge. Kaneko attacked with all her strength, 3 swift strikes and acrobatic moves, but the blows did not seem to move him. He then tapped her lightly on the forehead, sending her flying into a tree. She pushed herself back up and unleashed gusts of wind from her hands that tore through the surroundings, sending trees and rocks scattering. Exhausted and on her knees, she found that the man still stood uninjured. The man placed a broken mask on the ground and told her that the person she sought stood nearby, then admitted that he was not Issei. His form shifted. He resembled a battered fighter with white hair and visible wounds, and he sank to his knees in pain. Kaneko asked why her attacks had not affected him. He explained that, although her blows had caused him great pain, the mask had been an illusion created by his master to hide his injuries during battle. When Kaneko asked why he had gone to such lengths to approach them, he said it had been to protect them. He revealed that the message, the orb, and the confrontation had all been part of his master's plan. Still confused, Kaneko listened as he instructed her to take the 3 artifacts to Rias Gremory along with the documents. She agreed and asked if he would be all right. Before he could disappear, he asked if she loved Issei. Kaneko answered that she loved him more than her own life. He told her to go. Back at the mall, Asia asked where Kaneko had been. Kaneko replied that Rias had sent her for the documents. Rias, however, remembered Kaneko saying she would go see Aquino and Ophis, and the 2 of them stepped away from the group, confused. As they reviewed the papers, Rias became alarmed and told Kaneko that the documents were ultra-secret files from the underworld. Kaneko realized that Darks had been with her. She produced 3 of the 8 Nova jewels and said that Darks had given them to her. Rias read that Darks had been reported dead 11 months earlier during the investigation into Issei and the Nova gems, and that he had been considered a potential future replacement for her brother as Mao if he had ever stepped down. Before they could process this fully, the two of them were instantaneously transported to the field where the encounter had taken place. When they arrived, they were shocked to see the mask restored, and Darks collapsed on the ground, lifeless and clearly beyond help, emitting a foul odor. Rias stood bewildered, taking in the ruined field and the fallen figure. Kaneko, trembling, said that both the man and the mask still gave off Issei-senpai's aura and asked what that could mean. Rias said she did not know but promised she would find out. Back at the mall, Kaneko insisted that they had to tell them. Rias agreed but noted that they needed to get answers from those girls. They returned to where the girls and Issei's wives were gathered. The mask they held began to glow with an intense light that shifted into a dark black and filled the area, forcing everyone to close their eyes. Rias, disoriented, took Kaneko's hand and they walked together through an endless dark space. Kaneko sensed Bush and Issei and felt his presence drawing near. Her cat spirit ears twitched and her tail swayed like a radar. The mask started to float, surrounded by a black aura that seemed to absorb the darkness and then revealed a white space with floating crystals. As the darkness receded and gathered around the mask, a familiar male figure materialized before the frightened girls. Kaneko recognized him instantly and, angered, took a battle stance once more. Something, however, had changed. A green emerald aura began to surround her, her ears seemed longer, claws formed on her hands, and sharp teeth appeared. Her eyes took on a fierce, focused look, filled with a dangerous determination. Rias reacted with a mixture of fear and certainty, hugging the small girl while worrying about the mask and who wore it. Kaneko demanded that Darks stay away from Bush and her friends and that he return Issei. Darks was the one wearing the mask. Rias, quickly recovering from shock, gathered destructive energy in her hands and aimed it at the figure as he finished materializing. Darks claimed that this was the gift from his master. Kaneko, confused by the changes in her body, felt strength and energy rising within her. Darks explained that this was the ultimate power a cat spirit like her could possess, a perfected form that granted complete control over sage techniques and demonic magic, making her power comparable to the Demon King's. Rias asked incredulously how that could be possible while holding the small transformed girl, who watched her new power with wide eyes. Darks continued, saying that Issei had prepared a gift for each of them. Akino's gift had been memories of happier times, Rias's had been wisdom about what had happened and why, Kaneko's had been power to protect those she loved most. Hearing the voice of the person they had thought dead caused the girls to lower their guard. Rias demanded to know who he was. Darks replied with a sarcastic smile hidden behind the mask and flicked his fingers, changing the scene into a field of ice in which the three girls floated. Darks pointed to what he called his last day alive. Rias and Kaneko watched as a vision unfolded, four warriors fighting a humanoid creature that emanated the same energy as the creature the Demon King had faced a month earlier. The four demons had fought the gigantic creature and, in a furious strike, extracted 3 glowing stones from its chest. Darks narrated that after they defeated the monster they intended to advance into the underworld but decided to wrest first an error that would cost them dearly. Suddenly, a man named Absalon appeared and demanded the stones. When they refused, Absalon struck down 2 heirs, killing Seraphal Leviathan and Ajuka Beelzebub. The girls watched in horror as the 2 young heirs fell. In an attempt to survive, the Demon King's heir Falbium Asmodeus allowed Darks and the heir Surzex Lucifer to escape to safety. The last boy used his body to absorb Absalon's attack and protect his friends, while a 4th companion vanished through an unstable gate. Darks explained that the attack had not been fully contained. He had to sacrifice almost all his power, leaving himself near death. He also lost his right arm in the confrontation and, gravely weakened, wandered for 3 days. The vision darkened until only a large circle remained, showing how the light faded from his eyes. Darks said that before he died he saw the man who saved him and his companions. The scene shifted to a night setting around a campfire. For the first time in a long while, Kaneko saw Issei sitting by the fire beside the one-armed boy wearing a mask. Tears filled her eyes as she watched Issei tend to the badly wounded youth. Issei observed that the wounded boy was waking. The boy asked, confused, where he was and what had happened to his companions. Issei told him that he had arrived too late and that the others had died. The boy, looking at the mask he wore, demanded to know who Issei was, identifying himself as an heir. Rias asked for clarification about what being an heir meant. Darks explained that each demon king needed an heir in case one of them died or stepped down, and that the selection process was part of the system. Rias wondered aloud whether the demon king succession was a sham. Darks said that there were more important things to watch and urged them to keep observing. Issei revealed that Absalon had been the killer. He explained that Darks had survived because his friends had transported him to another plane, but he had remained clinically dead for 3 days. When Issei found him, he was barely alive and close to decomposition. Darks admitted that he did not understand at first, but then he remembered everything. He clenched his fists in anger and said that the first strike had affected them all. Absalon's attack had placed a curse on them, and the plan had been for them to carry that curse to the 4 demon kings. The vision began to fade. The memory ended abruptly and the girls returned to the present, their minds heavy with what they had just witnessed. Darks remembered that in the end Issei had died but his soul had refused to leave, so Darks had created a mask to save him. Darks from the past recalled that when he saw Issei he could still move. Issei reminded them that he had warned them. A curse lay upon him and others were using his lifeless body to reach the Mose, even if it cost them a clear delay in their plans. Darks observed that after that everything had taken its natural course. When the vision ended, they disappeared from the plane of light that had transported them to the shopping mall. Rias called for Kaneko. Kaneko insisted that he was alive, that he was not here but would return. The small girl knelt down in tears, clinging to Bush, who also began to cry at the young woman's words. Darks urged them to trust him. Darks then appeared with a different body, looking younger, and the mask was no longer white with red sparkles but black with scratch marks. Rias asked why now and why not earlier. Darks explained that it had been necessary. The gift was knowledge, but to know one must first learn. While he spoke, several girls ran at full speed toward the cat demon, who continued to cry. Looking at the ground, Darks said he had to go and that he would see them at night. Rias thanked him, and after a bow Darks transported away. Somewhere in northern Europe, Darks reported that 3 of the 10 master gifts had been delivered. Issei thanked him and instructed Darks to return, to keep Absalon under watch, and to keep him informed. Darks mused that it was a funny game. Issei insisted that it was not an ordinary game. He and another were playing with the threads of fate. Darks remarked that the Issei present could not compare to the one others described. Issei acknowledged this while turning to look at an inverted pyramid floating in the air. Issei asked Valley if he was ready. Valley replied that he was, and that he had been planning this for a year, though he admitted it might seem foolish. Issei replied that it might be foolish but it would be a great test, and he prepared to invoke Balance Breaker. Valley confessed envy that Issei had attained Balance Breaker while he still had not. Issei promised that Valley would have it in time and told Darks to go deliver the remaining gifts. He said he would contact Darks when they were finished here. Darks complied, addressing Issei as Master. Valley checked if Hayadu was ready. Issei affirmed that he was more ready than Valley. Secure in their resolve, both dragons donned their armor and set course for the strange inverted pyramid that hovered several kilometers above a vast lake that looked like an ocean. Valley reflected on his travels in search of strong opponents, saying he had seen many strange places, but this one surpassed them all and made him let out an ironic laugh. Issei agreed that he had felt the same the first time he saw it, then asked if Valley was sure he wanted to go on, warning that he might not return and that there was still time to back out. Valley nodded, asserting that this was the only way to find a method to eradicate the threat forever. They accelerated without hesitation, flying at ridiculously high speeds toward the pyramid. After a few minutes they entered it and began to descend, finding themselves in a chamber. Valley wondered aloud how this could be possible. To their surprise, the interior of the pyramid was a room as large as a city. From the outside the pyramid had appeared enormous, but the interior was. The sensation was inexplicably stronger than Valley expected. Issei told Valley that he looked surprised and reminded him that the first trial had not even begun. Valley asked what he meant. Issei explained that the place had been created to strengthen its bearers, that here they would learn what they still lacked to obtain power equal to Great Red. Valley reacted that such a thing was impossible. A brief moment of stunned silence passed as Valley absorbed the revelation that both he and Issei might possess power comparable to Great Red. Issei allowed himself an ironic smile and said he had planned this for a year, not as a picnic or vacation, before leading them deeper into the enormous citadel. After hours of walking in silence, Valley could not see Issei's face, which was hidden by armor, but he felt a presence and a power that made his skin prickle. He wondered how Issei must have felt the first time they had met. Issei pointed out a gilded door inset with many gems and said that this was the place. Valley, asking if this was where the trials began, heard Issei explain that this door and 6 others throughout the citadel were the trials' 7 things Valley lacked before he could obtain the legendary balance breaker. Valley demanded to know what Issei would do. Issei replied that for the moment he could only act as Valley's guide and urged him to keep the promise he had made to his former self. An ominous dark aura seeped from the door. Albion, speaking inside Valley's mind, reminded him that they did not have many options. If Valley failed this trial, he would not surpass that red threat. Valley insisted that Albion was not to abandon him and swore he would never blame Albion for caring about his welfare. With tears brimming and renewed resolve, Valley leaned against the heavy door and said that it had been a long time since he had cried. Albion acknowledged Valley's dream as imperfect but real, that it belonged to the comrade he called companion, and asked him to promise not to let that ridiculous red outperform them. Valley agreed. Without hesitation he pushed the door open and entered a room that instantly deactivated his balance breaker. Albion reassured him that the voice was still with him even if the balance breaker had been suppressed, and Valley pressed on. When the doors closed behind him, they vanished as if they had never existed. From nowhere Issei appeared, wearing armor as black as a moonless night. The gems on it glowed red, filling the chamber with a crimson light while leaving only Issei's face uncovered. Outside the room, Drake questioned Issei's certainty. Issei admitted he was not certain but said there was no other option. Drake noted that in the past they would have ended the challengers, and Issei admitted his old self might have destroyed them, yet would have spared them with a smile and told them to strengthen themselves and return to fight again. Drake confessed he did not remember that older version of Issei, and Issei wondered aloud whether that being had truly been him and whether he could ever become that person again. Inside the room, Valley started, surprised to see Issei waiting. He told Issei that he had not been supposed to leave him outside. Issei explained that he was not the Issei Valley thought. He was an illusion created by the pyramid's powers, part of the trials Valley had to pass to reach the legendary balance breaker. Issei asked Valley if he was truly prepared, warning that passing all the trials would likely grant him the ability to control legendary power and a force comparable to Great Red, but survival could not be guaranteed. Valley declared firmly that he was not about to back down now and tightened his fists. Issei accepted that and announced the beginning of the first trial. Valley asked what he had to do. Issei described the trial. Valley must face him in combat, either outlasting him for a set PRD or discovering the true nature of the trial so that the door to the second challenge would open. Issei reminded Valley that the pyramid held many mysteries and that the door would only open when the trial was deemed overcome. Valley refused to waste time on talk and steeled himself for battle. Issei warned that there would be no mercy, then slipped his face behind the helm of his armor and assumed a fighting stance. Valley noted that with the balance breaker and some of his powers suppressed, he could not use full armor. He would have to rely on his demonic power. Issei offered no reply beyond a small smile that Valley could not see through the helm. The combat began with an anime-style flourish. Valley unfurled 8 demonic wings and took to the air to create distance, condensing a great mass of demonic energy in his hand and hurling it toward Issei. The illusion dodged lightly, almost casual, and when Valley launched another attack, Issei vanished from sight in a blink. Valley scanned the chamber as ripples of illusion shifted around him. He braced himself, realizing the trial demanded more than raw force and that he would have to adapt quickly if he hoped to open the next door. B.E.R.Z searched quickly for his opponent without success until a voice came from behind. He turned and tried to defend himself, but it was already too late. A powerful blow to his stomach echoed through the room and sent the platinum-haired fighter flying several meters. He recovered his balance in midair, wiped at his mouth, and returned to a fighting stance. 20 minutes into the fight, B.E.R.Z was breathing with difficulty after his hard struggle against a copy of the brown-haired Issei. The copy appeared unfazed, waiting calmly for B.E.R.Z to commit to a move so it could react. B.E.R.Z realized he could not keep fighting at a distance. The copy dodged his attacks easily and closed the gap without effort. He resolved to face it in close quarters. He concentrated his demonic power in his hands until it flowed down his arms, then launched himself at high speed toward Issei's copy. He unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks, but the copy dodged and blocked each strike without strain. After 10 more minutes of close combat, B.E.R.Z continued the barrage of combos, but nothing seemed to affect the copy. He leaped back to create some space, took a deep breath, and charged forward again with a feint to the face. The copy blocked the blow with his arm and countered with a low kick. B.E.R.Z evaded by leaping backward. Another 10 minutes passed. B.E.R.Z lunged and threw a punch that the copy avoided, then the copy returned a nearly successful strike that forced B.E.R.Z to duck and try to sweep his legs. The copy jumped back and closed the distance with a high kick, forcing B.E.R.Z to step sideways and avoid the blow by mere centimeters. B.E.R.Z answered with a high kick of his own, which the copy stopped with a palm, spun, and sent B.E.R.Z flying into the air while charging a black dragon shot crackling with red lightning. As B.E.R.Z struggled to regain his balance and spread his wings, he noticed the attack heading straight for him. He summoned a defensive shield, but it shattered under the force of the blast. The impact threw him through the air. He crashed against a wall and dropped to the floor. B.E.R.Z pounded the ground in frustration and felt pain in his hand from the impact. He thought he could not defeat this opponent and wondered what to do next. Issei's copy taunted that nobody had said B.E.R.Z necessarily had to defeat him, and the illusion began to charge more power, intensifying with a steady surge. B.E.R.Z felt his options narrowing and questioned how he could possibly win. Issei's copy announced that he would fire a dragon shot and released a massive black sphere esperanzas across the room, the energy filling the space. Albion warned B.E.R.Z to move out of its path, but B.E.R.Z shook his head and made it clear he knew what he was doing. Albion said he trusted him. B.E.R.Z shut his eyes and spread his arms wide as the sphere reached him. When the energy struck, there was no violent explosion or agonized scream. The sphere dissolved around B.E.R.Z into a swirling dust of black and crimson, and the sound of a door opening echoed. Issei's illusion spoke to congratulate B.E.R.Z for passing. The illusion began to fade into crimson dust and withdrew, clearing the way. Albion asked what the test had been. B.E.R.Z admitted he did not know for certain, but he believed the test had not been to defeat the copy. Instead, it had been to accept that he could not always win. Issei's illusion explained that from a young age B.E.R.Z had trained to overcome every obstacle in his path. This trial required him to accept that his power was not absolute and that there might be someone he could not beat. With that acceptance, the path forward opened. B.E.R.Z stood in silence for a minute as the crimson dust filled the air and reflected. He told himself that the trial had been harsh, but he had passed and could continue. Nearby, Rias instructed Kaneko to go and distract the other girls while she sought answers. Kaneko promptly obeyed and went to gather their companions at Rias's command. Asia protested as Kaneko tugged her along by the wrist, but Kaneko insisted that they go get ice cream where the best treats were sold. Irina called for the girls to come along, and they all agreed to follow. Rias led Shijun away to a quiet place, asking her to tell everything she knew about Issei. Shijun hesitated and began to cry. She admitted that Issei had not abandoned Rias and that he was still there even if she could not see him. Shijun apologized to Rias and confessed that another woman loved Issei as deeply as she did. She agreed to reveal the truth only as a secret to be kept to the grave, adding that they had orders to kill anyone who revealed it. Rias began to explain why Issei had not returned, but she could not finish. A familiar voice echoed, audible only to the two of them, and both of them grew nervous as they searched for its source. Darks admonished them, asking what Shijun had been thinking and whether she truly intended to break her vow despite knowing the consequences. Darks said he had expected this might happen someday, but least of all from her, since she had always been the most faithful to their lord. Without warning, Darks appeared and a black light surrounded the girls, transporting them to a dimensional space that Rias knew well, a white expanse with floating crystals. Rias became frightened as Shijun was drawn into the darkness emanating from the mask. Darks reminded them that the master's orders had been clear, to speak what must be said and to keep the secret, and that for breaking her word Shijun would be consumed by the darkness. Shijun begged for mercy in tears and asked to be forgiven, fearing she would never see the person she loved again because of her broken promise. Rias tried to intervene, insisting that Shijun had only been trying to teach her what Darks refused to reveal and that, given Rias's gift of wisdom, Shijun should have been freed. Darks replied that to no one must learn, and that learning was not always peaceful. As the darkness closed around Shijun, Rias lunged forward to save her but could not pass through the shadowy barrier. Inside the shadows, Shijun pleaded for Issei's forgiveness and accepted whatever punishment was coming to her. A small crimson light appeared within the gloom and steadily grew, illuminating the silhouette of a young man. Shijun's eyes widened as she recognized him. Issei hurried forward and wrapped her in a desperate embrace, holding her tightly and pressing a calming hand to her forehead. Issei asked Shijun calmly why she had considered breaking her word. Shijun answered between sobs that she had not wanted to betray anyone but could not bear to see someone she cared about so devastated. Seeing that person in despair after believing Issei dead had almost taken away their will to live, and Shijun could not stand to watch that destruction. She had intended to tell them what was happening, even though they did not fully know where Issei was or what he was doing. Gently wiping Shijun's tears, Issei comforted her with an affectionate embrace and a reassuring touch to her cheek. He explained that he had not given many details to anyone because he had sensed something like this might happen. It was not a matter of distrust but of protection. He asked her to return and to tell Rias that he was all right and would answer their questions when this was over. He reminded her that she and the others were very important to him and that if any of them were to be lost, a part of him would be lost as well. Shijun cried with relief and clung to Issei, expressing how much he meant to her and how she could not imagine living without him. Issei returned the embrace warmly, then told her it was time to go back. He asked her to tell Rias what he had just said and instructed her to deliver the next message to Asia. After a final farewell, Issei's figure dissolved into crimson particles as he urged her to take care of everyone until his return. Shijun answered yes, wiping her tears and smiling with renewed confidence at having seen him once more. Back in the white expanse, Rias told Darks that she had been right. Shijun had only been teaching something Rias had been denied. In a frantic voice, Rias warned that harming Shijun would be intolerable. Darks replied that Rias was not capable of following through on such a threat and that acting on it would only condemn her and rob her of any chance to reunite with the person she longed to see again. Rias stood in a corner, biting her lower lip in frustration and guilt, blaming herself for the danger Shijun had faced. The darkness that had trapped Shijun dissipated, revealing the woman again. Rias approached cautiously, expecting the worst. Rias asked if Shijun was all right. Shijun replied that she was frightened but otherwise fine. Rias felt a wave of relief and suggested they put the incident behind them, reunite with the other girls, and prepare for Shijun to settle into her room with new clothes and supplies. Later that day at the Hayudu residence, after the incident had passed, Rias returned home with her team, Vale, and Issei, following a day in which the girls had enjoyed themselves and finished their shopping. The girls from Issei's team bought clothes and other items to settle into the Hayudu residence, waiting for their master's return. They went to their rooms to unpack and arrange what they had purchased. Kuroka and La Fei went to rest in their rooms, leaving Rias and her group Ravel, Irina, and Ophis alone in the Star Lounge. Aquino noticed that Rias had looked worried since they had returned from the mall and asked what was wrong. Kaneko also urged Rias to speak up. Rias forced a smile and insisted that nothing was wrong. At that moment, a dark circle of magical light manifested in the lounge and drew everyone's attention. The group sprang to battle stances except for Ophis, who remained calm. As the light dimmed, the figure of a man appeared. Rias recognized him as Darks and called his name, prompting everyone to lower their stances. Darks confirmed that he had come under orders from his master to deliver a message to Miss Asia Argento. The declaration surprised everyone, though Asia showed relief and happiness. Rias asked if Darks had just seen Issei. Darks affirmed that he had and repeated that he had been instructed to deliver the message. Aquino asked where the message should be given. Darks declined to disclose further information. The refusal drew scowls from the others while Ophis remained expressionless, already suspecting that Issei had planned something to confront their current enemy. Kaneko prepared to force information out of him, returning to a battle posture. Ravel, Irina, and Kiba joined her. Darks warned that the four of them would not be enough to overcome him and that he would not speak even if it cost him his life. Kuroka descended the stairs with La Fei and stood beside her sister, and they all began to manifest their auras, but Darks did not flinch. Shijun then descended the stairs with the rest of Issei's team and cautioned against rashness. She explained that even all of them together would be unable to defeat him and that he was far stronger than Rias's brother, Lucifer. Rias reacted with disbelief at the suggestion that he was stronger than her brother. Shijun said she was serious and noted that Darks had not even assumed a true fighting posture. If he had accepted a fight, they would emerge badly injured. Darks added that his power did not compare to his master's at all and that his loyalty lay with the one who had saved his life. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated how powerful Issei must now be. Darks once more stated that he had come on his master's orders to deliver a message to Asia. He reached into his cloak and produced an orb, extending it toward Asia, and explained that the message would be revealed only to her and that she needed to be alone to receive it. Asia, trembling and a little frightened, approached Darks and took the orb. Shijun observed that Darks must have met with Issei if he had been given the task, and Darks confirmed that he had just met his master. Shijun asked how Issei was and when he would return. Darks said that Shijun herself should already know, since the jewel on her necklace had shown no change and she had, in a way, briefly met Issei. He added that Issei still had matters to attend to and then vanished as a magic circle formed beneath his feet. Everyone turned to Shijun in surprise and demanded an explanation about how she had met Issei. Shijun admitted that she had met him in a way but not face to face and suggested Rias could confirm the message she had received. Rias stated that she had indeed received a message while they had been speaking and emphasized that what mattered was that he would return soon. Rias directed Asia to go to her room to receive the message, since it was from Issei and must be important. Asia rushed to her room, turned off the lights, sat on the bed with the orb in her hands, and closed her eyes while trembling. She silently hoped that Issei was all right. The orb brightened intensely and transported her to a field of roses. Tears fell as she recognized Issei standing beneath the shade of a broad tree. Issei smiled and acknowledged her arrival. Asia ran to him, overwhelmed with relief and joy, and fell into his arms among the flowers. She cried and apologized for thinking he was gone and for not searching for him, and she clung to him tightly in a long, emotional embrace. Issei returned the hug and explained that he was the one who should apologize for causing so much pain to all of them. Asia asked why he had not come back and why he was not there with Rias, the club president, and the other girls. She described how they had all been suffering and crying, how they were still in pain, and how his presence felt both there and not there at the same time. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the brown-haired young man, who only smiled. Issei explained that this was not the true him but a part of her memories separated to deliver a message. Asia said that she felt him on her skin and in her body, but not in her heart. Her body felt safe, but her heart remained broken. Issei apologized once more and admitted that he did not have the courage to meet her eyes for causing her to cry again. Asia said that she would cry even more when he returned because her heart would start beating again after so long. She placed her hands on his shoulders and looked directly into his eyes, tears falling as she confessed that her heart hurt every day as if a part were missing. She begged to know where he was and when he would come back, pleading for him to return. Issei promised her and all the others that they would always be together. He asked for her hand and Asia, confused but without hesitation, took the brown-haired man's hand. Issei covered her pale hand with his and presented a gift, admitting it could not compensate for the pain he had caused. A crimson aura surrounded the hand, and an emerald ring began to glow more brightly than the aura itself. Issei told her that whenever she saw this ring, he would be close to her. He said that whenever she felt afraid or on the verge of tears, she should remember he would be holding her hand and guiding her, even if she could not see him. Asia wept tears of joy as a warm power flowed through her body. She described the sensation as familiar yet stronger and warmer than before. Issei explained that he wanted to give her that power so she could support him and everyone else in the difficult fight ahead, because she was the only one they could entrust with their lives. Asia agreed. Issei urged her to be the strongest among them, because if she fell they would lose their chance to win. He asked her to imagine the power she would use to help them overcome every obstacle from then on. Asia closed her eyes, and the image in her mind was of the brown-haired man in his armor. In that instant, a light spread across the field of flowers, and Issei smiled with satisfaction as Asia reached her balance breaker. When Asia opened her eyes, she was surprised to see her body encased in silver and gold armor with a pair of Pegasus wings on her back. She stared wide-eyed and noticed that Issei was smiling with satisfaction. Issei explained that this was her balance breaker, the power she would use to support them. An emerald light manifested in her hands and transformed into a silver bow in her left hand with golden inlays and a green arrow in her right. Asia watched in astonishment as the weapons appeared. Issei smiled and told her to remain calm. He asked her, if Rias asked what had happened, to say that she was now one of the happiest women in the world. Asia agreed but begged him to promise not to delay any longer, saying she did not know how much more pain she could bear. Issei reassured her that she only had to wait a little longer and promised that when everything was over they would have a day just for the two of them. Issei then disappeared into particles of light. After a while, Asia, the young nun, woke in Rias's arms. Asia felt dizzy and realized Rias was holding her tightly, concern clear on the president's face. Rias said she had been worried and asked if Asia had received Issei's message. Asia replied that she had and that she was now the happiest woman in the world. Rias was surprised and could only wonder what kind of message Asia had received. The platinum-haired warrior stood before the door that led to the next trial. He was exhausted and wounded, breathing heavily with only fragments of his armor remaining. He had overcome nearly all the trials, only one remained. Valley shouted that they were almost there and urged his companion Alvian on. Alvian, the dragon, acknowledged that this was the last trial and that it should not be worse than the previous ones, though both were fatigued from having pushed their powers to the limit. The platinum-haired warrior took a deep breath to clear his doubts, stepped through the door, and watched it close behind him. He knew that meant the trial had begun, and he was surprised by what awaited him inside. Valley expressed bewilderment at the sight, and Alvian said he did not understand it either. Both were surprised by what they saw. The room was vast and entirely white, completely empty. Valley stood in the middle and stared, thinking for a few minutes without finding an explanation. He decided to move forward. When he reached the center, the environment began to change and Valley immediately went on alert, taking a battle stance and scanning the surroundings for any sign of someone else. Alvian warned that nothing was being detected and told Valley to stay alert because an attack could come at any moment. As the setting shifted, Valley recognized where he stood at once. He found himself in the underworld, but it was ruined, collapsed buildings, fires, and rubble everywhere, with many fallen figures strewn across the landscape. Soldiers and civilians fought small humanoid monsters. Women with children ran desperately toward shelter, their screams and the cries of children echoing through the air. Alvian said he had a bad feeling about everything. An explosion sounded farther away. Spreading his wings, Valley flew toward it at incredible speed and arrived within seconds. He saw the same people who had interrupted the B.E.R.Z party and others he did not recognize. He looked closely and realized who was fighting. His own team alongside Rias Gremry's forces, Ophis, and the 4 demon kings. Even so, they were at a clear disadvantage. They were badly injured and exhausted, barely holding on. A roar drew Val's gaze. A huge black dragon was locked in combat with an equally massive humanoid creature that Val recognized instantly as Inovi. The dragon was struggling to contain it. Val was stunned to see Hayadu facing Inovi. He asked what all of this meant. A voice spoke in the room and pulled Val out of his thoughts. The voice said that what he was seeing was a vision of a near future. When Val asked who was speaking, the voice replied that its identity did not matter. What mattered was the scene before him. The creature that had once plunged the world into chaos, defeated and sealed at great cost centuries ago, was about to awaken again. Val asked if this was the future and if the battle against that creature would happen. The voice confirmed that the battle was inevitable. Val then asked why he himself was not present in that final battle. The voice answered that he would die long before the day of the final fight. Val shouted in disbelief. The voice insisted that this was reality whether he accepted it or not, and explained that the last trial remained unfinished. He had failed to activate the legend balance breaker because his desire for power had overshadowed his heart. Val sank to his knees at the sudden revelation. A roar of anguish reverberated through the battlefield. Val watched as Inovi struck with a scythe, a blow that disrupted the black dragon's form and caused it to lose its transformation. Alvian pointed out that, although one dragon was strong, one alone would not be enough. In the past both dragons had been needed, and the present would be no exception. Powerless, Val watched his friends fall back amid the intense fighting. He clenched his fists in frustration and felt tears on his face for a second time. He saw his companions rush toward the brown-haired young man who had been gravely struck to protect them. Issei apologized, asking for forgiveness, then closed his eyes. His sacred gear crumbled into reddish dust. The girls wept helplessly, unable to save him. Val called out for Hayadu, terrified, and a voice confirmed that Hayadu had died from his wounds. Val continued to watch the battle, and to his surprise everyone around the fallen youth knelt, resigned, as if awaiting the final blow. Val asked why they were surrendering. The voice explained that they had lost the will to fight after losing their comrade. A charging motion from Inovi gathered a massive sphere of power. Absalon of Illusion declared that it was over and that this was the end. The creature released the sphere without hesitation. Everyone braced for impact as if waiting for their fate. Val could not bear to see his friends fall any longer. Desperate, he intervened at top speed, placing himself between the sphere and his teammates in an attempt to stop it. Just inches before impact, Val found himself in a different place. A pure white room, even more vast than the one he had first entered, stretching as far as the eye could see. A voice asked him why he wanted power. Val asked who had spoken. The voice repeated the question, why did he want power? Val answered that he wanted power to protect his friends and those who had accepted him despite his compulsive battle nature. He wanted the strength to prevent them from dying due to the selfish ambitions of those who sought to dominate others. He clenched his fists and wiped his tears. The voice told him that this act of selfless devotion would open a door, granting an enormous power capable of changing destiny, but that such power would bring great suffering and pain that even death could not erase. That suffering would fall upon him. Val called Alvian. Particles of light in the room gathered and coalesced into a pure white dragon with golden accents and blue eyes. Alvian advised him to decide with his heart, not with reason, protect them and accept the suffering, or allow them to die. Val smiled and said that there was nothing to think about. They had done so much for him and this was the least he could do. Alvian asked if he accepted. Val accepted. At that moment his vision returned to the battlefield. The sphere of power hovered mere centimeters from him, surrounded by a white aura that stretched to the ceiling and took on the appearance of a dragon. He gathered a great amount of energy in his mouth and launched it at the orb. The two forces collided, producing a massive explosion and a bright flash that lit the entire chamber. When the light faded, Platino stood alone in the empty white room. Platino noticed an intense white aura surrounding him and that his armor had changed slightly. It was thicker, with small flecks of gold, and the gems embedded in it glowed a vivid blue, casting light across the room. An unseen voice announced that he had completed all the trials and that he and the other dragon bearer now held the power to change destiny. The voice wished them luck and then faded, leaving the room in silence until the sound of a door opening interrupted it. Alvian expressed relief that they had succeeded. Valley observed that it seemed so, but warned that this was only the beginning.